I call the meeting to order. Please, thank you for joining us this evening. This is a regularly scheduled Greer City Council meeting called and convened this evening, April 26th, 2022. Having called the meeting to order, I'd like to ask Councilman Jay Airwood, if he would, to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance, then an invitation for council.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Let us pray.
Heavenly Father, I thank you for letting me be here this evening to work as your servant, a servant for your city. I thank you for all these that sit at this council who do the same. And I thank you, Lord, that they prayerfully look at each and every issue that we have to deal with. I thank you for everyone who's come tonight, and thank you that they're involved. I thank you that you have blessed our city beyond anyone's imagination, and I know that you will continue to do so. I pray, Lord, as we go through this evening that we will use the wisdom and the guidance that you give us to make decisions about your city that are pleasing to you. In Jesus' holy name I pray. Amen.
We set aside time at the first of each meeting for public forum. Public forum is a time that we set aside at each council meeting in which we will entertain the petitions, or I guess we've said we do that for petitioners, but we set aside time for those that would like to speak to an item on the agenda to bring their comments in that regard. We do have some parameters around that, and while we've got a number of folks that want to speak tonight, we will let them address council. I will, in the spirit of sticking with our time limit and with other considerations as well, limit comments to 3 minutes tonight. This is a little bit crude, but if you are making your comments, you've got 1 minute when I raise the yellow sheet of paper, and you have got 15 seconds to conclude when you see the red. I'm going to ask that we enforce that tonight, simply to keep us moving along. I would also ask that you be mindful of issues that have been raised by others that wish to speak. We are appreciative of all of your concerns, but we also know that others want to make sure that they are able to express their opinions and ideas as well too. So with that, when I call your name, you are to come to the podium here in the front of the room. If you would, as a matter of record, give us your name and address, and then your 3 minutes will start at that point in time. So, let me set up a stopwatch, and Miss Sybil Smith is our first speaker this evening.
My name is Sybil Smith, and I reside at 180 Brookdale Acres Drive in Lyman. I am here to address Ordinance 16-2022, and first of all, I want to thank the council for having such a capable employee as Ashley, who is well-trained in working with two old people who have hundreds of questions for her every day. But two things I want to address, first in a general sort of way, and the second thing I want to address is very specific to my location. But in a more general way, the traffic is already very bad out there on Gap Creek Road, and my husband will be addressing that. And down on Lemon Creek Drive, we already have, there's 4 speed bumps within a 3/4 mile area, and speeding limit is 25 miles an hour. And that is one of only the 2 egresses or ingresses to this proposed subdivision. But when you look at the layout of this proposed project, you see that it extends all the way over to the Woodruff Drive area, and that is 1 mile to 1.5 miles to where they will have to ingress or egress. And emergency services have special needs for getting into areas like that, but I am sure the developers that we have for this project are on top of their game and will be able to get all of that up to speed. But mostly I'm concerned, very concerned about my own backyard and my own front yard, and I reside in Brookdale Acres. And I may have a little bit of relief on my backyard. What is that? 1 minute?
Yes, ma'am.
Left?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. My backyard, and in my front yard, I don't want to hear about 5 or 6 years down the road that you've got to put a cut-through road up through Brookdale Acres Drive. And this entire process seems to indicate just a little touch of social and cultural ageism. In an older neighborhood like Brookdale Acres, where older people, mostly older people in older homes and all, a weak voice is usually expected. And I think there's unintentional cultural and social ageism that a lot of the developers just do not understand what it means to be culturally sensitive to the aging population. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Next will be Mike Smith.
My name is Mike Smith. I live at 180 Brookdale Acres Drive in Lyman, and I'm glad I wrote mine out so I can stay within the time limit so I don't get red flagged. I'm concerned about the 53 single-family units off of Gap Creek Road in Lyman, 16-2022. On March the 31st, I attended the SCDOT meeting discussing a roundabout to be constructed at the intersection of Gap Creek Road and Gary Armstrong Road. The SCDOT representative told us that the roundabout was being constructed because of already existing traffic safety issues. This intersection, which according to SCDOT already has traffic safety concerns and is 0.3 miles from the projected egress-ingress to the 53 proposed houses off Gap Creek Road. Up until now, we have only been discussing traffic congestion, which is very real. However, with the SCDOT already concerned about Gap Creek Road and Gary Armstrong Road intersections, the discussion is raised to a higher level of concern. The Greenville County website states that each household has an average of 2 vehicles. By the way, I think that must be an old statistic. I think it would at least be 2.5 now. And each household would have 2 vehicles per household. So with 53 units projected to be built off of Gap Creek Road, 0.3 miles from an intersection already with safety concerns, we could have 106 additional vehicles daily entering an unsafe area. Also, if you leave the unsafe roundabout intersection and travel approximately 2 miles west, you will see another development already being graded with roads and street lights. The development is projected to have 800 new units. Let us say, and by the way, you do the math on that, and you have 800 units times 2 vehicles, you got 1,600 vehicles. Take half of that, you got 800 leaving. Let us say that you take 1/2 of those vehicles traveling down Gap Creek Road to the already described unsafe Gap Creek intersection, and remember the 53 proposed new units on Gap Creek, 3/10 of a mile from the unsafe intersection. I am sure that at some time all of us have unknowingly made a decision which proved to be unsafe. However, to make a decision which knowingly has the potential to be unsafe is something else. Therefore, I suggest the project off of Gap Creek Road be evaluated for public safety reasons. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Ken Peak.
Came up the last time, Mr. Mayor, and couldn't see. So I'm trying to correct that this time.
I know the feeling.
My neighbors have already pretty much addressed the issues. And I want to say that none of us are against what is going on in Greer in terms of the development. We are very pleased with that. I'm pleased with the downtown. But there's always some collateral damage anytime that you develop at the pace that we are going right now. And I just want to make sure that as we develop and do the things that need to be done in our development and in the plans that you have, we address those things that my neighbors have already talked about. Right now on Gap Creek Road, if you go down to Greer High School, across from Greer High School, there's a development. I don't know how many houses are in there, but I've heard 800. I don't know. There's two schools down on the lower end of Gap Creek, Greer County schools. There are 2 houses up on the upper end of Gap Creek, which is District 5 schools. And you have about 6 developments already that serve Brookdale Acres and Gap Creek Road. So what I'm asking is that we make sure that we have an impact study and have all the issues addressed. Gap Creek Road is already patchy and got holes all over it down on the lower end. So please, as we develop these programs and look at what it is that we want to do, I don't think anybody's against development, but we definitely have some concerns with continuing to pack things into something that's already over capacity. So I think that if we are going to do those things, the infrastructure must be addressed in a way that addresses safety and all the concerns that the neighbors have. And we definitely, I've lived in my neighborhood now for over 30 years, and we have never had any problems with, it's quiet, it's just a nice place to be. And we don't want to cut through road through Brookdale Acres down on that lower end. I'm gone, Mr. Mayor. Thank you very much.
Mr. Peak, before you leave, would you just state your name and address, please?
I'm sorry,
just for
sir.
the matter of record.
My name is Ken Peak. I live at 190 Brookdale Acres Drive, Lyman, South Carolina.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate
Thank you very much.
Mr. Grover Timms.
My name is Grover Timms. I live at 1028 Abner Creek Road, Greer, and I'm speaking to the Pac Divine annexation and zoning of the property that is located immediately behind and adjacent to Fulton Presbyterian Church, 821 Abner Creek Road. A pastor of that church, I want to thank publicly the mayor, Mr. Hopper, Mr. Booker, and also Mrs. Albert and meeting with us over the last couple of weeks, and a number of folks are here tonight from the community. I'm not going to rehash all the things that we've talked about, but I will reiterate our desire is we're not opposed to the annexation. What we're concerned about is the number of houses, the density on that 20 acres or 21 acres, and the fact that there's only one in and out there to that property. And it will be quite a number of folks that are located in that area. That's obviously, we can talk about the impact with traffic and all of that. But what I think you heard as you met with us as citizens in that area, we'd like to work with the city, work with the developers, how to work together and maybe lessen the number, whether that comes through a better proposal on design review, or as I think what we felt like as citizens, more of a zoning of a single family, or I'm not sure I get all my little single family detached garage and all that. I'm not sure I got the lingo down on that, but anyway, I think the consensus among the citizens was that we would desire to see single family homes, and this is certainly more in keeping with the property beside it on David Street, across the road in front of the church, and so forth. So that's my request. I think there'll be some others that will speak to some of the concerns regarding the blasting and that type of thing. So that's my word. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Walter Patton.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Walter Patton. I live at 103 Lake Crest Drive in the city of Greenville. And I've come such a far way this evening because I want to speak on behalf of Fulton Presbyterian Church. They have been very kind and gracious to me over many years, and I've spent a lot of time on their land. But first and foremost, I am a historic preservationist. I work extensively in cemeteries to conserve and preserve cemeteries, to restore them back to their former state, what they looked like when they were established. And I am gravely concerned that the blasting that's going to take place behind Fulton is going to utterly destroy the foundation of the church, which is made of field stones and is not a typical modern style foundation. And if there is that kind of blasting there, I'm certain that there is going to be damage, because every day I see things that cannot be saved, that I cannot fix, that are of massive historic importance. And Fulton is of massive historic importance not only to the city of Greer, but also to all of us as South Carolinians. Because no matter how small the church or how small the cemetery, the story is told just the same. It's the story of our past. And like I spoke about the foundation of Fulton Presbyterian Church, what's the point in having a future if we have no foundation? If this is damaged, if we do damage to the history in the cemetery or in the church, there are things that can't be fixed. There are things that can't be remedied like that. And I see it every day, and it breaks my heart, and I can't always fix it. I can't prevent it always from happening. But what I must do is implore you, please, to make the right decision and to help these people, because they're a small community, but they have a huge voice, and they care a lot about what happens here. And I ask, please, that you take into consideration their concerns about what is going to happen behind their church. And like I said, I've spent a lot of time on that property. The rock and the boulders behind that land, I mean, they're everywhere. You can park 10 cars on them, I think we said once, or maybe even more cars than that. And if you want to get through that rock to be able to put a foundation for anything in there, there's going to have to be blasting, and it's going to cause damage. I can promise you that. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Lisa Timms.
Hi, I'm Lisa Timms. I live at 1028 Abner Creek Road, and I've spoken to very competent engineers who believe that we, as a church, as well as our neighbors, have valid reason to be concerned that there could be significant damage to our properties if blasting takes place, and that is almost certainly going to be necessary. the property didn't sell for a long time behind the church. Several buyers looked at that and said no to it, including Scott Gillespie, who's building all over the place, as I understand it. And he had even worked with the church to make sure that he was going to be able to have a sewer line going right through our property. And at the end, he said no. That speaks volumes to me that he said no to that land. There's huge issues also with regard to how that property is going to drain, because the lowest part of Greer is at the creek there. It's at the bottom of David Street. So we understand that permits for blasting come from the State Fire Marshal's office, but we request that the city of Greer require a bond to be posted by the Divine Group prior to any blasting or development done on the property adjacent to Fulton Presbyterian Church in the event that the church property should suffer damage. And we would also like, please, a copy of that documentation, and would like to request, please, that our deep concern for the safety of our church, building, and cemetery be put on record at this meeting. We'd like you to please deny the request for zoning. We don't want the proposed development plan for this property to be zoned DRD. The land use map and zoning map, I understand, is what you all use to make your determinations, and it's the basis for how decisions are made by both council and the zoning commission, and our safety certainly should take precedence over that, and I think you would agree. This is a very dangerous area already where we live. The intersection of Brockman McClyman and Abner Creek Road, already the safety vehicles can't get through. At times, we're right by BMW. 85 is very close by. The traffic backs up onto our road. We have 18-wheelers going up and down our road, and they can't get through that often to be able to help us. So we need very much for you all to say no to this development of 400 people, at least 400 people. They said 3 bedrooms, so that we don't have this kind of addition to people on our road already. We have development after development coming in, that there's only one of the new developments from Liberty Hill Road down to the hospital, only one that has people in it yet. We're looking at about 2,000 more people. Anybody pulling out of this development that we're talking about tonight is going to have to make a left-hand turn and go through Brockman McClyman and Abner Creek, which is the place that's already stressed where our emergency vehicles can't get through. A big part of Spartanburg County is served by our fire station right there, and those people desperately need help when they need help. So please consider our safety. And I just want to say that my dad and his family fled Latvia for their own safety. The Russians were invading, and we have seen, my dad has taught us to be very politically minded. The people in the room last night at the meeting with the mayor are also politically minded and have been very involved and have had success in what they are trying to accomplish in the past. So please take to heart what I'm saying and protect us and protect our church. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to take a stab at it. Richard Alpert.
I'm Richard Albert. I live at 111 Notting Hill Lane in Greer. I'm just right across the street from the church and the big open field there. Moved there about 9 years ago. I used to live in a gated townhome community, and we moved because we wanted more open space. And so we fell in love with Abner Creek Road, that area. You know, you drive out there off Westmoreland, you feel like you've gone into another space because there's tree canopies all throughout there. It's open space. And, you know, you just felt like you could breathe, like people are on top of you and you have some room to move. The area proposed across the street, I was kind of shocked to see a townhome community going in there because it just doesn't make sense. We have, just in the last year, 4 projects going up, like right now, and we can't even get in and out of our neighborhood sometimes. You can't even barely get on the Westmoreland, and when you're taking your kids to and from school, you're going to the grocery store, you're going to work, commuting, it's a pain right now, and those places have not even developed yet. We're dodging the road like with 18-wheelers and cement trucks and construction equipment and people that are trying to access these spots. And I just think that you've overloaded the area with projects. We're not against development. You know, somebody asked yesterday, are you guys against development? You know, we're not. We know it's inevitable. I mean, in the last 3 years, I have seen no less than 5 deer killed right outside the church there. Going down to Abner Creek Road, it's maybe a 100-foot section. I don't know why, but they like to cross the road there. And it's really sad to see that. And, you know, we've kind of intruded on their turf, haven't we? We can't stop that from happening, but what we can do is we can minimize the impact in the area. You guys just said, we don't control the roads, that's the state. But you do control the decisions you make by putting too many people in that area. And so I feel better about, you know, designating that a single-family residence area instead of, that would be more congruent with the homes that are around there instead of 2-story townhouses. Okay? 130-something units, wall-to-wall concrete and asphalt. It just doesn't fit for that area. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, sir.
Samantha Turney.
My name's Samantha Turnus, and I live at 743 Abner Creek Road in Greer. My property borders this proposed development on 2 sides. I have some major concerns that I've already emailed out to everybody, but I think after attending the meeting last night, it was clear that a lot of the decisions have already just been made because people are just trying to follow this plan for the city of Greer and propose subdivisions. And I mean, I myself raised 4 sons, 2 drivers right now, 2 more little ones coming through. And we too have lived in smaller neighborhoods that are very, very dense. And it's really troubling to picture the future of city of Greer residents as just all being piled in these townhomes. Mr. Booker last night talked about how he grew up in this area. Mr. Hopper grew up out in this area. I grew up in Iowa on a rural farm on 400 acres, and my children are blessed right now because we have the space that we have. But these sorts of communities, all it's doing is piling in tons of people on top of each other, allowing for very cheap housing, kids just being stuck inside all day long on devices like what my 2 are on right back there so that they're nice and quiet for this meeting. But there's nowhere to play. There's nowhere for the dogs to be. There's nowhere for the kids to be. Like we're raising generations of kids who are stuck on Netflix, stuck on devices. There's nothing else for them to do. When the future of the city of Greer planning, and I'm looking right at you, Mr. Danner, told us last night that the goal is to just put as many possible developments as can be, and that every single one of these homes pays $1,000 to $2,500 right into the city of Greer's pocket, and it doesn't go into any sort of impact fund that benefits the community around. There's no guarantee that there's going to be a fence to protect trespassing to properties like mine, property like the Tim's Church, property like the Bowens, where our kids can play free of worrying about complete strangers who are moving in and out because this is going to be a rental division, and our kids be protected and safe. Like, we're destroying the American dream, truly. And there's plenty of other issues, but I've already emailed those out, so I'm not going to reiterate them here. Thank you so much.
Thank you, ma'am. Chris Bowen.
My name is Chris Bowen. I live at 229 David Road in Greer. I love Greer. I moved here because I wanted space. I moved here because I wanted to raise my family. I moved out of a busy city with heavy traffic and congestion that created frustration, crime, all kinds of, the kind of life where you move and you move and you move, and there's never a place where you can, like somebody said, settle down and breathe. Everyone's kind of said a lot of the things I'd like to say, but I'd like us to consider maybe what kind of city are we going to be? Do we want to be a big city? Do we want to have that small town feel? Do we still want to preserve some of that for the future? Some of the character, some of the things that brought so many people here that love this area. I'm not against people coming from outside. I came from outside. But I embraced our community. I embrace the culture. I love my neighbors. And I'm just hoping that you guys will think about the next generation of kids that are growing up here. Will they have the same opportunities you had? Will they have these opportunities to run through the woods? You know, right now my kids are truly blessed because they do border and they run down over a creek and through the woods. And I am definitely, as a parent, concerned that 136, I don't know if they're going to be purchased or rental townhomes, does pose a perimeter risk of strangers that will, in fact, actually cross into our land. I've had to run people off of my land already. And we don't even have anything remotely bordering a place where people can just easily access it. So that is a big concern. All I can ask is that you prayerfully consider everything in the future. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, sir.
Next speaker, Seth Bowen. Please.
Yes.
Oh, wait a minute, that one may not be on.
Is this working still? It's not working. It's working. Okay. Dear council members for the city of Greer, my name is Seth Bowen. I live at 229 David Road. I speak tonight to share my concerns with you about the new community that's going to be built behind our houses. When my parents bought our house, we were excited to finally be in a place that was quiet, private, had a creek to play in, and was so clean and so safe. My siblings and I love to play at the creek. If this many people come to move into my backyard and this many homes are built there, I fear many unsafe changes will come with it. I did some research and I found a document that the City of Greer posted online, and I will share some of it now. This document is called the 2010 Comprehensive Plan Natural Resources. The first thing I read was regarding the weather changes this type of building project brings. It says the following. An urban area, sometimes referred to as a heat island, is typically 3 to 10 degrees warmer than the surrounding countryside. Large expanses of concrete and asphalt have been shown to alter the local climate because they absorb the sun's light and then heat the air during the cooling periods of the evenings, making local climates warmer over a given period of time. Trees are a nullifying factor to these heat islands as they provide reduced air temperatures, reduced glare, and reduced wind speeds. Second, about air quality, it says that the EPA in South Carolina DHEC regulate and protect the air quality in the state. While most of South Carolina meets standards ambient air quality, increased urbanization in Greenville metropolitan area impacts local air quality, especially ground-level ozone. Ground-level ozone forms when the oxides of nitrogen and volatile organic compounds are heated by the sun during the spring and summer months and can be exacerbated by human activity. Continued efforts must be made to further reduce the area's ground-level ozone in order to avoid non-attainment status, which could have a negative impact on the ability for the city to attract commercial and industrial development, and more importantly, the quality of life for our community. Again, this is all the stuff you guys posted on your document. The only problematic sources of air quality found in Greer are derived from industry, automobile traffic, and utilities. Greer should analyze these factors in relation to the growing ozone problem and develop local solutions to manage ozone within acceptable levels that work in hand with the promotion of development. The city has supported Greenville's county's Spare the Air efforts and should continue to do so. Finally, I found out that our creek, David Creek, is the lowest point in Greer city limits, which means more toxic water in our creek and in water, my well water. Not water from their new streets, but water from that many people's yards and the gross chemicals from roofs and grass that will leak into the creek. It worries me for our great deer and wildlife that live out back. Also, I'm worried for my brothers and neighbor friends who would like to continue to enjoy playing in the backyard without being scared that someone will harm us, record us, or bring bad stuff out back and ruin our land. Thank you for your time and listening to my concerns. Please help us preserve this and keep us safe.
Thank you, sir. I can assure you we'll never annex your house because I don't want him running against me, so. Let's make it a family affair. Apparently, Catalina Bowen.
Hello, council members. My name is Catalina Bowen, and I live at 229 David Road. It is a family affair, and I would say that my particular neighborhood is definitely like a family. I grew up, as you heard my husband say, in Florida, specifically South Florida, Fort Lauderdale. High congestion. When we had our first daughter, we chose to move to South Carolina because when we arrived, we found the American dream. Being originally from South America, it was even more of the American dream, and my family was very proud that I progressed in this way. Saying that, we finally found a home, and that being on David Road, with the kind of breathing space that everybody is so much glorifying. The concerns that I have tonight are very specifically to a mother. I have 4 children. Ms. Turnus has 4 children, and we have a piece of property that, if you didn't know any better, when we moved in, we didn't know any better, looks like a public park. It's the most beautiful backyard anyone could ask for. I would have never imagined such a thing. So my concerns come with the safety of my children. The PACT group, Divine, last time they spoke, mentioned that they would put a 6-foot perimeter privacy fence around, and I would plead with you that there would be a something written that would help us know that they were going to keep their words. I know so many, I can't remember the word, contractors and people purchasing lands and wanting to build these communities, they say many things so they can get their wishes to be fulfilled. The wishes that are going to be fulfilled here are a little extreme. I'm not sure if anybody has mentioned this yet, but the land that is being proposed is very high. Therefore, there's going to be much water runoff. If we could at all zone this to be maybe single-family homes, there'll be much more yard space where the waters can seep into the ground and not just run off, not only on my neighbors, but also not into the Dillard Creek being that lowest point. Also, being from South Florida 15 years ago, we are used to evacuation routes. There is no way, with that many homes coming in between Westmoreland and Brockman, McClyman, that we can escape from anything. We're pretty much going to be prisoners in our own location. So, no, I don't mind that there's going to be townhomes back there. My kids, love knowing that there's going to be maybe new neighbors, but the amount of homes that are coming in back there, and the way that the transient sort of people that are going to come back there are going to see the land, they are going to they're going to want to take opportunities. And if we ever have a situation like a lockdown again, where people can't leave, well, it's going to be very, I don't know the word, appetizing for them to want to go back there. So that the concern of traffic, and I'm not sure if everybody received that email, but we also receive 85 traffic, and so that's a big concern. So please take into consideration the safety of my children, having some sort of written thing where they're promising a fence, and also to bring down the number of houses. Thank you for listening. Have a great night.
Daniel Coleman.
Good evening. My name is Daniel Coleman. I live on 440 Cox Road, Greer, 29651. I'm here to talk about ordinance number 22-2022. We have a church on that place, River of Life Romanian Church. We bought 2 parcels that were being residential, and we would like to do a parking lot because we grew in the last year and a half as members. And tonight I would like to please the City Council to take in consideration the situation again and look to make, if it's going to be approved, as only restricted for church parking lot, even if in the future somebody will buy it from us down the road, generation of a generation, to be only restricted as a church because as a safety of a parking lots, we don't have room where to park in that area. We have over 140 children in our church, and it's a very traffical road on 101, and we're ready as a church to sign our deed to be only that parcel that we bought to be changed at the parking lot to be commercial and restricted if somebody will buy as they wanted to be auto sale or laundry mat, just to be recorded in the city council as a church use. I would like again to please you to take this situation again to take a look at it for safety and for our children that we go. Most of the time that we have density with our cars, it's Sunday morning from 9:30 to 12 and Sunday night from 5 to 7. Rest of the week, pretty much the parking lot is empty, but the place that we need to park our cars, it's the most time, it's once a week, it's Sunday. And sometimes maybe during the year we have events, but most of the time we rent parking, parks, public parks, to go and stay there in the picnics and so on. So again, I would like to please City Council tonight of Greer to take a look again at the situation, and we'll greatly appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Those that have participated in the meeting tonight, thank you for your eloquence and respect for the other speakers. It went well, and we appreciate that. I can assure you that your comments will be taken under consideration. With that, we are going to deviate just for a moment. I have a special proclamation to give tonight, and so I would like to do that at this point in time, and then we will move on with our regular meeting. This is a proclamation offered by the city of Greer. And it says, whereas the office of the professional municipal clerk, a time-honored and vital part of local government, exists throughout the world and is the oldest among public servants, not the oldest occupation, just among public servants. Whereas the office of the professional municipal clerks provide the professional link between the citizens and the local government bodies and agencies of government at all levels, and whereas professional municipal clerks have pledged to be ever mindful of their neutrality and impartiality regarding equitable service for all, and whereas professional municipal clerks strive for professional development through participation in education programs, seminars, workshops, annual training at both the state, Providence County, and international level, and engage in professional organizations. And whereas Tammy Duncan has served as the City of Greer's municipal clerk since 2004 and has fulfilled all her duties, responsibilities of her office with exemplary dedication to the City of Greer. Therefore, the City of Greer does hereby recognize the invaluable work performed by municipal clerk Tammy Duncan and proclaim May 1st through 7th as Tammy Duncan Professional Municipal Clerk Week in the City of Greer. If you will, join me in a round of applause for our clerk.
Tammy, be sure to tell everybody that you didn't start at as a municipal clerk. Where did you really start and when?
I started in 1981 with the police department.
Great dispatcher, too.
Thank you.
Council, with that, let's move to the minutes of the council meeting from April 12th, 2022. I'll entertain a motion that they be received. Second. And a second. Any items of note for the clerk? Hearing none. Ms. Duncan.
Mr. Arrowood,
Yes.
Mr. Booker,
Yes.
Mr. Hopper,
Yes.
Mr. Dumas,
Yes.
Mr. Bettis,
Yes.
Miss Albert,
Yes.
Mayor Danner.
Yes. Council departmental reports are contained in your packet. You have those as a matter of record. Questions can be directed to the administrator or department head. Mr. Seifert joins us this evening for a financial review.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Tonight I'm pleased to bring to you the financial performance summary for the month ended March 31st, 2022. At that time, we have revenue recorded of $24.8 million, which is on budget. Operational expenditures of $21.2 million, with additional fund balance usage of just over $1 million, for total expenditures of $22.3 million. The operational expenditures are 11% under budget, while the total budget is 6% under budget. And we have a current cash balance of just over $21 million. If you'll reference the dashboards we have a total positive variance of just under $2.3 million. Moving to the hospitality fund, we have revenue recorded of $2.2 million with expenditures of just over $1 million, excuse me, and a carrying cash balance of $2.7 million. And finally, in the stormwater fund, those numbers are for March inflated. We have just come through property taxes being delivered from the county, and the way they come in from Spartanburg County, they get recorded in the stormwater fund first, because Spartanburg County does not separate stormwater from the sanitation fund. So all of it comes in, and then at year end, we pull those funds out. So the revenue in the stormwater fund is inflated, but recorded at just under $1.4 million, with expenditures of $700,000 and a current cash balance of $3.1 million. Be happy to take any questions you may have.
Council. Is the action regarding the stormwater fee there, the line item issue, they'll only issue us one line item in addition to our.
Right, on the tax bill, they don't have enough space to separate the different fees. So we give them one general fee, and then we have to break it out at the end of the year.
Thank you. Others? Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Administrator's report, Mr. Merriman.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, Council. A couple reminders. This Friday afternoon, evening is our annual employee appreciation picnic. We held out here in City Park. So you should have your invitations, but by way of reminder, that will be this Friday. The other thing I need to ask you guys, or at least let you know, is that my plan to schedule a budget workshop either right before first reading or between first and second reading. As a reminder, first reading of the budget will be your second meeting in May, and we have the second and final reading scheduled for the first reading in June, which doesn't seem like much, but it's 2 meetings away. So time is drawing nigh. So I'd like to schedule a meeting, a workshop specific to the budget, and I'll be reaching out to y'all this week to get our calendars together and make sure that we have the proper notice to the public. This Saturday between 8 a.m. and 1 p.m., so that would be the 30th, over at the Recycling Center is our annual spring cleaning day. So items not accepted or on weekly curbside pickup, paint, pesticides, furniture, electronic, etc., tires, we will be accepting those for that 5-hour window on Saturday. If you'll recall, last year I think we had a bit of a monsoon come through that day, so it dampened the day a little bit, but hopefully the weather will be good and it'll be a great opportunity for our residents to get rid of some of the stuff that does not ordinarily get picked up.
What time?
Between 8 a.m. and 1 p.m. on Saturday. As you can see out in the hallway, we are nearing completion of the additional office space as we continue to grow and expand our services to the citizens. We will be moving our event staff to this floor in the new office space. Finance will begin the transition to the first floor. So there's some moving pieces going along along those lines for the next couple weeks. And then finally, we are beginning to do the work out at Berry Avenue. As you'll recall, we are going to continue to work with Greer Relief to get Greer Relief moved out of the J. Vernon Smith building here on Victoria and moved into the new facility over on Berry Avenue. Of the 30,000 square feet in that building, 12,000 we are going to retain for our use. We will be working with our project management staff to move engineering into that facility and do some updates out there. If you've not been out to Public Works or to the Operations Center in a while, our stormwater staff and engineering staff has been in a trailer in the parking lot. And so we are looking to home them permanently out there. So again, just as we continue to grow and work on a lot of these capital projects, I'd like to give you guys updates on where we are with that and potential relocation of employees. Mr. Mayor, that concludes my report. If there's anything you need from me, I'll be glad to entertain questions.
Thank you, sir. Questions? Comments? Hearing none, council, let's move to old business. The first item before us this evening is the second and final reading of ordinance number 4-2022. This is an ordinance to provide for the annexation of property owned by Arc Divine LLC located on Abner Creek Road from 100% petition and to establish a zoning classification of DRD for said property. Mr. McMahon, any new or additional information in regards to ordinance number 4-2022?
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mayor and Council. Staff is requesting to amend Exhibit E, which is the development plan you have before you, and the statement of intent, which is Exhibit F. The original statement of intent that came before you with the design plan showed a secondary access onto David Road. They have since removed that, created a promenade-style entrance coming in, so it will be 2 lanes coming in, 2 lanes going out. It will taper down into a single lane. They have kind of done that. Because of that secondary access, they have met with the fire marshal to discuss this. Fire marshal is fine with the 2 entrances coming in with that style. This planning commission did hold a public hearing. They did recommend approval of this. The developer has stated that they will install a privacy fence around the perimeter of the property based on concerns from the citizens. I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have.
By show of hands, is the owner of the property with us, or a representative of the owner of the property with us this evening? Are you available for questions? Okay. For the purpose of discussion, I'll entertain a motion.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. Floor is open for discussion.
On the development agreement, this is DRD, correct?
Yes, sir.
The fence, is that part of the DRD?
That was something they brought up at the actual planning commission meeting. So if that is something that council would like to have, I believe we should have that put as an amendment to amend the statement of intent to include that language. And we can have that updated.
I've got a few things that a lot of people have brought up. One is the water runoff and the water quality going into creeks. I don't know if this was said at the planning commission meeting, but any development, you cannot have runoff greater than before the development. So it all has to be retained and released at a slow rate. That's a law. I kept hearing about the traffic and preserve. I heard preserve. And a lot of it was done in the name of safety. I'm not sure how safety and without any development, that's the only way I think that everything maybe stays the same. But I do not think that I've been aware of, since I've been on council, that the city has ever been a part of approving a subdivision where there was, some of the folks characterized folks coming into a new subdivision as transient and leaving their property, going on to other property and causing issues. Could have happened, I don't know, but I did not that's never been a issue that we've had to address. I understand that there's a concern about the wildlife. I got an email about that, and nobody likes to see nice dead animals out on the road because of traffic. But we have more wildlife in our city, and I'm not talking about on the fringes, the old Greer. We have wild turkey, we have deer, we have coyote, we have blue heron, and this wildlife is able to exist, and we're not seeing it because we're doing away with habitat. Is actually the development creates wildlife corridors, and it funnels this wildlife into these really long areas that have water and food, and there's no pressure from development there. Kids don't have anything to do because we're taking land. Well, we have parks and things like that, and will there be any recreation element in this development? Yeah. So there will be a recreation element in this development, and the issue about the annexation fee per lot, that is used for different types of infrastructure, from sidewalks, road improvements. It also can be used for green space, parks, etc. Infrastructure, I heard one comment about that, I believe. Infrastructure from sewer, water, electric, schools, traffic, conditions of roadways, turn lanes, etc., are all addressed prior to any of this coming before it becomes public. And the authorities that be with school districts, utility providers, SCDOT, in this particular case, Spartanburg County Roads and Bridges, they all come together in one room. And that is discussed, and if there's any issues, those are brought out at that time and then presented to the developer as to, you're going to have to address these things. Our development regulations also address needs for traffic studies, landscaping inside the subdivision, and then also outside as well.
Others?
I have a few questions, possibly for the representative. Are there any, and I know this is a very conceptual plan, but do you all anticipate any kind of unique construction methods for this in regards, at least, I know a lot of folks were concerned about blasting, especially with the pond. Is there any kind of special sand filters, trying to get depths, and any unique construction methods that you anticipate?
Sure, nothing unique than we.
Sir, if you would.
Oh, yeah.
Would you state your name as a matter of record, please?
Sure.
And your relationship to the project?
Sure, Chad Carson at 247 Mercer in Simpsonville, and I'm the project manager for Divine Group. So nothing specific that we anticipate as far as unique. And as far as the blasting goes, realistically, that's been more of a concern that has been brought to us, not necessarily internally. Our engineer, he's working to try to avoid it if at all possible, and realistically, we think that we might be able to avoid it 100%. So the concern is absolutely a concern, but it's it looks like we've been able to mitigate that concern with utilities, and there's one area of surface rock, but that's currently looking at going to be used as green space in there. So the only area of surface rock that was found in the geotechnical is open space. So as far as any kind of unique, nothing to my knowledge.
That surface rock, could you give us a vicinity, just maybe just pointing towards it?
Sure.
Are we talking
absolutely.
towards
It's,
towards the playground or towards the?
No worries. Let's see, sort of towards the back.
Does he have a pointer, Brandon?
There's not one up here, sir.
Let's see, I've got,
Are we talking about around the bend or?
yeah, kind of
Okay.
around the bend. If you go to the right-hand side,
Yeah.
more in this area where those two trees are.
Where it's
Forgive me
denoted
if you
as
can't.
trees. Yeah.
So kind of up there before you get to the turn.
Okay. Well, and I appreciate everyone that came out today because this is the side of town that I grew up on. Definitely near and dear to my heart. Walking through these streets right off Pearson Road, which is very close to the quarry, about a mile away. But so I had to sit down and take the emotion out of this decision, and sometimes you have to go with what's tried and true, and we have a plan in place to, for future land use, and, we lose our credibility if we, just kind of go away from that plan. And folks talked about design review district, and I want to kind of clear the air about a design review district doesn't necessarily mean townhomes. In this particular case, it just so happened to be a townhome complex, but it's exactly what the word says, a design review district in which they're working with our staff to come up with a design that they will review and present. Just on the docket today, we have an item that's a design review district in which he's coming from townhomes back to single family. So that just kind of, gives you sheds a little light on that fact. And I've sat down with the developer and looked at some of these reports and talked about, what they have going on. And I feel that this is a nice low impact design, and development can go either way. From my understanding, this property has been under contract a few times, and them wanting to come to the city, petition to be in the city, utilizing the space as, homes, is definitely a need that we have. And this pendulum can go the other way, because if it stays in the county, my background, the only other option with this surface rock is you just build a foundation above ground, and a foundation above ground typically is something like a mobile home or a trailer. So I think with what we have going here is very consistent with our plan. So that's all I have to say.
Well, we've got the representative of the owner. Are there other specific questions that he might address this evening?
Well, yes and no. Can they verify, can the owner verify that they did say we would install that privacy fence? And if they do verify that, can we amend I'm sorry, I'm getting blinded.
I know. Yeah.
As far as go ahead.
I think it would be pertinent if you would just give us an overview
Yes,
of the project and what your intentions are at this point in the project. As we've discussed and Mr. Booker has just brought to light, there are changes that can still be made in this process, and working with planning and zoning would address those. And while there may be other items that needed to be added or considered, I don't know that that's within our realm of definition tonight, but making you aware of them certainly, and staff at the same time would bring some conclusion to that. Mr. Merriman, you wanted to add?
Well, I think, yeah, Mr. Mayor, and I'm going to look to Brandon to say yay or nay, but if y'all make the motion tonight to amend the statement of intent to include the 6-foot privacy fence, they're obligated to do so. Brandon, is that?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
All right. Floor's yours, sir.
Sure. Thanks so much for your time, Council, Mayor, and anyone here on behalf that's come on behalf of Abner Creek. So just as kind of a 30,000-foot overview, we are a local developer. We're not just coming from out of town. I was born and raised here, so I feel like I know the area pretty well. Graduated from Malden High School. I've got 3 daughters, so I get the area. We live in Simpsonville. So we're a local developer and genuinely want to be able to bring a product that the city can be behind, that the neighbors can be behind, not something that we're just going to throw up and then just walk away from. We're here in the town, here in the area, and we have no intention of going anywhere. So that's kind of from a developer side of things. As far as this project, we did our best to try to hear the concerns early and start the conversations early, whether that's with council, whether it's with concerned citizens. Pastor Timms and I actually had a conversation, so we have really tried to address the concerns head on and not shy away from anything. Realistically, we want to be completely transparent, and a lot of those concerns were met and addressed with changing our layout. So we've gone back to the drawing board. We've lowered the density. We've added more green space. We've added parking, stuff like that. Tried to move our amenities around just so it's not as close to the cemetery at the church. So we feel like we've genuinely tried to hear the concerns and act on behalf of them. Honestly, it's great seeing so many people here that come and love Abner Creek because they still love Abner Creek. There has been some development over the past couple of years, and you love it in spite of it. So we're hopeful that if this passes, you guys will continue to love the Abner Creek area and the corridor, and we fully intend to bring a product that we can stand behind, and I can drive my kids drive themselves, but they can drive by and know that I was a part of it, and be proud that it's a product that we brought to the city of Greer. So that's kind of my little spiel.
Can you share with us, at least at this point, what the mix of the number of bedrooms would be at this point?
Admittedly, I don't think we have those numbers just yet. 2-3 bedrooms, but forgive me, I don't have. It's still preliminary in our thing.
All right.
Mr. Carson, appreciate the opportunity to talk to you last week.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's been asked of me several times. I know we spoke about it on the phone. Can you just once again address the intention of whether this is going to be a for rent or for sale product?
Yeah, absolutely. And I know we had spoken on the phone. Thank you for your time. So when we looked at it, we always try to figure out what's the highest and best use for the product. Ultimately, at this point, we feel like the best use for it is a for sale product. We're still preliminary in that, but that's what we feel that the best use for this product is.
But you haven't really made a decision whether it will be for sale or for rent.
Correct. Yes, ma'am.
When you say you cut down on the density, how many original townhomes did you have planned, and how many do you have planned now?
188 was the original plan. Now we're down to 136.
That's quite cut.
Yes, ma'am.
Had you considered the possibility of having a mixed?
We had, yes, ma'am. When we looked at it as far as the feasibility report and that area, townhomes just seemed to be a better fit. Again, kind of going back to the highest and best use, not to use that word, terminology lightly, but it seemed like townhomes would be a better use in that area.
Now, on this particular project, are there sidewalks out on Abner Creek?
I
know they got left off one subdivision that's out there. I don't understand how that happened, but they did.
There will be sidewalks along Abner Creek along this section.
Only for the property that adjoins Abner Creek.
Just for this part.
Yeah.
That's
right. And what would you do about if there's possibility of the blasting? I know they're quite concerned about the church.
Absolutely.
The cemetery.
Yes, ma'am. Well,
certainly. The church is quite old. 1900, I believe they said. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And we'll certainly try to be respectful of that, and we've done everything we can so far to try to avoid it. I've got the geotechnical report where most of it that was found underground is 5, 6, 10 feet deep. As far as anything there, again, the only surface level rock was towards the back of the property. So we don't foresee any blasting. But, if it does have to happen, we'll go through the proper channels and make sure that it's done the right way. And I guess that's all I can promise at this point.
And someone mentioned playground. Where was the playground? I see the
I'm
clubhouse
sorry.
and the pool.
Yes, ma'am, towards the back, kind of the northwest corner. It looks like a little cross on here, I believe.
What goes into your feasibility study? How do you make decisions to build townhomes versus single family, and how do you come up with?
Sure. So it's a third party. So we'll send it out and say, hey, here's the area that we're looking at. Kind of tell us what's best for it. And we leave it open-ended in a sense. Whether that be apartments, townhomes, single family, commercial, whatever. Most of the time, it's we'll narrow it down to residential, so not commercial, but we'll just say, hey, here's the area. we know that we've got at least one entrance. Tell us what's best for that area. It'll come back, we'll look at it, and then kind of do an in-house thing. But we really kind of give them the reins as far as the feasibility study goes. Just say, we've got this parcel, we'd like to do residential of some sort. Tell us what works best in this area.
And they're typically looking at what the city's already done and what they plan for the areas, and they're factoring in those things in their decision.
Correct. Yes, sir. Everything that's already been passed and that they know of, they're certainly taking that into consideration.
Mr. Carson, I know you've heard this. I heard it a lot as well, the proximity to the cemetery, and I appreciate, the changes to the pool area, the clubhouse area that have already
Yes,
been
sir.
made. Do you know offhand approximately how far the pool is from the cemetery at this point? Just from
I want to say we've got a heavy 50-foot buffer, so realistically, I would say about 150 feet. No, that's just me approximating, knowing that we put a heavy 50-foot buffer there. So that's, just take that as me kind of eyeballing that. Forgive me, I don't have my engineering drawings here.
And if we were to actually put in writing about the privacy fence, what perimeter would we be putting that around?
Well, I guess that would be overlaid in the DRD, but realistically, any of the residential areas. I don't know if it would necessarily be needed on the whole property, but we'd certainly be open to it if that's something that would put citizens at ease.
There's no anything we can do to screen the cemetery and the church that way, to preserve the
Yes,
serenity and the historical nature.
Yes, sir. Yeah, we could certainly do, the trees and the fence, and ultimately, we're not opposed to a fence. We didn't necessarily envision a community that was, put off by itself, so the fence wasn't in our mindset. But, certainly if it makes people more comfortable, we're open to it. So I don't want to necessarily pass it off as we're opposed to it. It just wasn't the vision because we, felt like we were in line with the rest of Abner Creek corridor. But, for the record, we will put a fence up if you'd like.
Can you address, or Brandon, perhaps even where we are with traffic impact?
Yes, sir. TIA was completed. They will have to do a left turn lane off of Abner Creek into the site. They will also pay a portion of improvements at Abner Creek and Westmoreland for future signalization.
As Rodman McClyman at Abner Creek, did that enter into it at all?
That intersection was studied. It didn't show major impact to it.
Would you have him removed from the audience, please? We'll return to the meeting. Others with questions in regard to the representative of the developer?
How long of a turn lane are we thinking at this point?
That's 150 feet.
Is there room on that road for a turn lane, or do they have to extend it? Or?
They will more than likely have to acquire some right of way to get that turn lane in. They're still working with DOT at this point.
Yeah. I know several have pointed out the dangerous coming out of where it would be coming out of with the curvature in the road and all.
Others?
I'll just say, I understand the blasting isn't something that we regulate, that we can directly address. I hear a willingness to be sensitive that way. I would definitely encourage, as much advance notice, as much sensitivity where that's concerned, for the church specifically, but the residents that way. I'm hopeful. Based on the data that you're sharing, I'm hopeful that, for lots of reasons, that you won't have to do that for your sake and for the area's sake that
Yes,
way.
sir.
But I do understand, the foundation of a historical church. I do understand the concerns. I'm not an expert in that area by any stretch that way, but I do understand the church members' concerns, the area's concerns. I know you do too. That will go a long way if this is approved, if something is approved here toward being a good neighbor in that area, for sure.
Yes, sir. Absolutely agree.
By show of hand, are any of the property owners are adjacent to the property to the west here tonight? The people that would be behind this project? Okay, thank you. Others? Comments?
Well, I'll say I had the privilege to represent this area there. I've actually gotten to meet several constituents through this process. As always, I appreciate that input very much. I want to be very clear, and I don't mind publicly saying, I understand and I believe in our comprehensive plan and our direction from a development standpoint. From a density standpoint, from a diversity of product standpoint, townhomes, I don't have a problem with that, right? Even in this area, I understand what we're trying to accomplish, and I agree with what we're trying to accomplish. All that being said, we've got a lot going on, and that's been shared. I know we all understand that in that corridor there, and so I'm certainly not. What I've heard from my constituents, other neighbors in the area, is they understand development's going to happen. They're even okay with that. You know, folks are asking for single-family detached, that way a little bit lower density. I don't have a problem with development on this piece. I don't have a problem even with the idea of single-family attached townhomes. But I do hear what's being expressed as far as the density right now, based on the number of projects we have in the area. So simply out of a timing standpoint, I suppose I can understand the sentiment, and I can see that there's a case to be made for, if this is developed now, you know, lower density, single family detached. That's my sense on this based on the feedback.
I think as a result of our meeting last night, I know that I've been able to bring a couple of ideas to the administrator today of things that we might plan in the future in terms of educational efforts and conversations with DOT about the intersection above the project there with Spartanburg County and SCDOT, and address some of the other issues that were raised during that meeting last night. And so I do see this as a bit of a work in progress. You know, one of the things that occurred to me after our meeting last night was that South Carolina has some of the strictest annexation laws in the nation. And if you look to some of our neighbors here in the southeast, many cities are by state law annex based on density. So their growth is simply a matter of numbers. And when the numbers in that area reach a tipping point as described by state law, you're automatically brought into the city without a process. And so while many may find our process lacking or not allowing the kind of input that they wished they had, it does offer an opportunity, and I think the more we acquaint ourselves with those opportunities and possibilities, that the more we can be involved in the process. And so, just wanted to add that you were heard last night. I know it was, you know, some felt like they may not have been heard, but you were heard, and we will take those things under consideration. Others?
I'll just add generally, you know, we're taking up a question here momentarily that's in my neighborhood. So I understand when things, I just want to say, I understand when things get close to home, you know, there's just questions that swirl, and I do understand that. But whatever the outcome tonight, I also want to say that you know, these things aren't made in a vacuum, and all 7 individuals up here, I'm confident, having been here for a little over 2 years now, we all want the good of our residents, and there's actually a very intensive process and consideration that does go on And I'm appreciative of that, not as a councilman, but as a resident of the city for many years now as well. So, but I do understand the uncertainty, the questions that arise when something is this close to home that you didn't expect maybe when you moved here 10 years ago. But that's where we are, having to make hard decisions.
Questions?
I'd just like to thank everyone for coming out this evening too and voicing your concerns regarding this development.
Questions? Comments? Further discussion?
So is tonight is the appropriate time to amend the motion to put I guess I'd like to see the motion amended to add to the development agreement that there is a privacy fence, 6-foot privacy fence included in the development agreement. But I'm assuming that who made the motion and the second has to agree. Is that right?
For a point of clarification, do you mean statement of intent, sir?
Yes,
Okay,
yes.
thank you, sir.
My question is,
No, go ahead.
my question is, do we want to put fencing? Because you made a good point about not doing the fencing. Do we want to do it around the whole thing or just portions?
I'm sorry.
That
Go
might
ahead.
muddy the water for us.
I'm sorry.
I said, do we want to do it around the whole thing?
I
or
think the
portions?
question is in regards to what areas are appropriate and what areas
Yeah.
aren't. And I agree. I think it's onerous at this point to say that the whole thing needs to be fenced. But I also wonder, you've got people that are here tonight that are on one side, you've got people here that are on the other side. We've got a 50-foot buffer along parts of it. Given the fact that one of the things that a lot of people mentioned tonight was that, they liked the open space and feel of it, and while they may not want to look at the back of a townhome, I can understand that, but on the other hand, I also know that, maybe one of the reasons I want to buy a townhome is to look out over the area as well, too. While I don't want to miss an opportunity to get agreement with the developer, I'm also not sure that I would want to vote tonight to ask him to fence, with a privacy fence, 21 acres.
I understand the point about do you want to do the whole 21 acres or you just want to do certain sections? I understand that. I just, what would be the best way to address that, man? Because the developer is, as he said tonight, they're willing to work and do what they need to do. Is that something that we're comfortable in allowing staff to, as they work through this process, to work with a developer on? I'm fine with the staff, because I know our staff. I know they do a really good job, and when we ask of something, they do it.
Mr. Timms, is the portion of the property of the church fenced? Is there a chain link fence there?
No, sir.
Not around the cemetery?
No, sir.
Okay.
We only have a fence that runs along Apple Creek Road, and front of the church. But we, like I said, shared with you last night, we have a lot of people coming from the developments on our property to use our open space, our basketball, and we have plans to put in a commercial grade playground. It's not that we're not hospitable, but we do have concerns about just the numbers, a lot of enemies.
Mr. Eric Wood, I would entertain a motion that at a minimum, that the boundary lines of where the property meets the church's boundary lines, that there be a privacy fence, and then beyond that. we'll leave that to staff. I don't know how you want to word that, but.
I see the administrator is shaking his head. Are we creating a big mess? I don't know that you're creating a big mess. It's leaving a significant amount into interpretation for staff to determine the appropriateness of putting a fence around it, because ultimately we will be picking winners and losers, who gets a fence and who does not. And that is not a position I'd like our staff to be in. So while we are sensitive to the fact that the neighbors are concerned, and to be honest with you, I think maybe even some of the folks that may be future residents of the townhome community may want a fence. I don't know. I don't know that staff is the appropriate arbiter of that, given how challenging this would be. I'm not comfortable with staff doing that. Now, what I did hear was the developer's willingness to do it. And so what I would really rely on their good neighbor approach to what I think they've done here, and to appropriately address citizens' concerns with a fence. But to leave it to staff to determine where that goes is not where I think we need to be. But we will do whatever council directs us to do.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to call the question at this time.
It comes as we have a motion and a second. Question's been called. We'll move forward. Ms. Duncan.
Mr. Arrowood?
Yes.
Mr. Booker?
Yes.
Mr. Hopper?
No.
Mr. Dumas?
Yes.
Mr. Bettis?
Yes.
Ms. Albert?
No.
Mayor Danner?
Yes. Council, let's move to the second and final reading of ordinance number 5-2022. This is an ordinance authorizing the execution and delivery of a development agreement by and between the City of Greer, South Carolina, and Park Divine LLC with respect to infrastructure improvements in the City of Greer and other matters related thereto. For the purpose of discussion, Mr. McMahon, any new or additional information in that regard?
No, sir.
For the purpose of discussion, I'll entertain a motion to receive.
Second.
And a second. Floor is open for discussion.
Mr. Mayor, if I may interject, just to clarify, by way of reminder, these development agreements are specific to the area, and they specifically instruct staff and finance where those funds will go. And in this case, this development agreement is designed specifically for capital improvement, so it doesn't get dropped into the general fund and absorbed through our normal operating expenses. It's specific to capital improvements.
Thank you, sir, for the clarity. Others? Ms. Duncan.
Mr. Arrowood?
Yes.
Mr. Booker?
Yes.
Mr. Hopper?
Yes.
Mr. Dumas?
Yes.
Mr. Bettis?
Yes.
Ms. Albert?
Yes.
Mayor Danner?
Yes. Council, let's take a brief recess in case anyone wants to leave the room, and then we'll go ahead and continue on with the meeting. We're ready to convene our meeting again. Council, we are at item number 3, the second and final reading of ordinance number 8-2022. This is an ordinance to provide for the annexation of property owned by Alvin and Nadine Donahue located at 873 Old Jones Road by 100% petition, and to establish a zoning classification of R10 for said property. Mr. McMahon?
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mayor and Council. Planning Commission did hold a public hearing on February 24th, and they did make a recommendation of approval of the R10 zoning. I'll be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Comes with a recommendation for approval. Comes with a recommendation of approval. Do I hear a motion and a second in regards to final reading of ordinance number 8-2022?
So moved.
Second.
Floor is open for discussion. Comments? Questions? Hearing none. Ms. Duncan?
Mr. Arrowood?
Yes.
Mr. Booker?
Yes.
Mr. Hopper?
Yes.
Mr. Dumas?
Yes.
Mr. Bettis?
Yes.
Ms. Albert?
Yes.
Mayor Danner?
Yes. Second and final reading of ordinance number 9-2022. This is an ordinance to provide for the annexation of a portion of property owned by Sandra Harrison, Teresa Alexander, Angela Henderson, Cindy Gibson, Grant Harrison, Michelle Hickman, Melissa Goldsmith, Mary Alexander, Miranda Alexander, located at 865 Old Jones Road by 100% petition, and to establish a zoning classification of R10 for said property. Mr. McMahon?
Planning Commission did make a recommendation of approval, and I'll be happy to answer any questions you may have.
I'll entertain a motion to receive. And a second.
Second.
Floor is open for discussion. Comments? Questions? Hearing none. Ms. Duncan?
Mr. Airwood,
Yes.
Mr. Booker,
Yes.
Mr. Hopper,
Yes.
Mr. Dumas,
Yes.
Mr. Bettis,
Yes.
Miss Albert,
Yes.
Mayor Danner.
Yes. Second and final reading of ordinance number 10-2022. This is an ordinance authorizing the execution and delivery of a development agreement by and between the City of Greer, South Carolina, and Indigo Blue Investments, LLC, with respect to infrastructure improvements in the City of Greer and other matters related thereto. Mr. McMahon.
No new information, Mayor.
No new information in regards to ordinance number 10-2022. I'll entertain a motion to receive.
So moved.
And a second.
Second.
Floor is open for discussion. Questions? Comments? Hearing none. Ms. Duncan?
Mr. Airwood,
Yes.
Mr. Booker,
Yes.
Mr. Hopper,
Yes.
Mr. Dumas,
Yes.
Mr. Bettis,
Yes.
Miss Albert,
Yes.
Mayor Danner.
Yes. Second and final reading of ordinance number 15-2022. This is an ordinance to change the zoning classification of property owned by Banco Group, LLC, located at 3700 Brushy Creek Road from C2 to RM2. Mr. McMahon, any new or additional information in that regard?
No, sir.
Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion to receive.
So moved.
And a second.
Second.
Floor is open for discussion. Questions? Comments? Hearing none. Ms. Duncan?
Mr. Airwood,
Yes.
Mr. Booker,
Yes.
Mr. Hopper,
Yes.
Mr. Dumas,
Yes.
Mr. Bettis,
Yes.
Miss Albert,
Yes.
Mayor Danner.
Yes. An ordinance, second and final reading of ordinance number 17-2022. This is an ordinance to change the zoning classification of property owned by Residence Developers, LLC, located on Snow Road from R12 Single Family to DRD. Mr. McMahon.
Yes, sir. Thank you. The statement of intent has been amended from what it was previously presented to remove vinyl siding and to add hardy, board, brick, or stone, and a combination of those two materials. That's all that I have, sir.
With that, I'll open the floor for discussion with a motion.
Second.
Floor is open for discussion. Questions? Comments? Hearing none. Ms. Duncan?
Mr. Airwood,
Yes.
Mr. Booker,
Yes.
Mr. Hopper,
Yes.
Mr. Dumas,
Yes.
Mr. Bettis,
Yes.
Miss Albert,
Yes.
Mayor Danner.
Yes. Second and final reading of ordinance number 18-2022. This is an ordinance to amend the City of Greer Historic Overlay District zoning map as allowed by Chapter 38, Article 3, Section 3885 of the City of Greer Code of Ordinances. Overview on that, Mr. McMahon?
There's no new information, sir.
No new information in that regard. For the purpose of discussion, I'll entertain a motion.
So motion.
And a second.
Second.
Floor is open for discussion.
Just to continue my comments from our last meeting regarding this, I just don't see the value in making this a historic overlay district. I understand the developer's point as part of their finance package, but the taxes will be frozen, and I don't know how many people or businesses that this building will house, but the cost to serve will skyrocket, especially over 20 years. I just don't think that's a good idea. And some history about the Greer Mill. I'm sure, and it was stated by the developer that, the mills were part of the development of the South, and yeah, that's true. But, it's not all good history. They came here because of cheap labor. They left because of cheap labor. Victor Mill was brought up in the conversation last time. Victor Mill never was part of the city. Greer Mill until the late 80s, I believe, was not in the city. Some research was done, and the administrator at the time found out that they didn't want to become a part of the city, but their hand was kind of forced.
That's history.
That is history.
Others? Comments? Questions? Additional conversation? Hearing none. Ms. Duncan?
Mr. Arrowood,
No.
Mr. Booker,
Yes.
Mr. Hopper,
Yes.
Mr. Dumas,
Yes.
Mr. Bettis,
Yes.
Miss Albert,
Yes.
Mayor Danner.
Yes. Second and final reading of ordinance number 19-2022. This is an ordinance authorizing the conveyance of any and all interest in certain real property in the city of Greer. Mr. Merriman?
No new information, no additional information, sir.
Entertain a motion to receive.
So moved.
Second. Have a motion and a second. Floor is open for discussion. Questions? Comments? Hearing none. Ms. Duncan?
Mr. Arrowood,
Yes.
Mr. Booker,
Yes.
Mr. Hopper,
Yes.
Mr. Dumas,
Yes.
Mr. Bettis,
Yes.
Miss Albert,
Yes.
Mayor Danner.
Yes. Council has moved items of new business, the first of which is the first reading of ordinance number 16-2022. This is an ordinance to change the zoning classification of properties owned by L&W of Greer Incorporated, located on Hawkesbury Drive, Woodruff Drive, and Gap Creek Road from PD to R12. Ms. Cotty, information in that regard, please.
Sure, thank you. These are three different parcels that are, let me just go ahead. Here is the aerial of the site. These are three different parcels that were part of the original Riverdale community that were undeveloped. The current zoning map shows them as PD plan development. And then our future land use map calls for traditional development. So this property was originally zoned as PD back in 1995. Our records are not as good as they are today. So the statement of intent and site plan were not adopted with the ordinance as they currently are for PDs and DRDs. So we were unable to find a statement of intent or a development plan in those records. However, the minutes from the Planning Commission do indicate that there were going to be 284 single-family lots and then 392 multifamily units, not to exceed 676 lots or units for the entire development. So just given those, the Planning Commission did hold a public hearing at their last meeting and recommend approval, and I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have.
For the purpose of discussion, I'll entertain a motion to receive.
Second.
And a second. Floor is open for discussion. By show of hand, is the owner of the property or representative of the owner of the property with us this evening? Okay, so noted. You available for questions?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Floor is open for discussion.
Now, those are like three different lots or three different sections. Are they going to be considered like, say for instance, Sugar Creek is all kind of divided up. Is it going to be kind of like that? Or I know Sugar Creek's not in the city, but that was the only one I could think of that was large.
Yeah, sure. So the tract that will have an entrance from Gap Creek Road will be its own neighborhood with its own subdivision name. And then the two parcels that are kind of the main tracts that connect to the existing Riverdale community, the one highlighted and then the star to the south of it, those will have a road connecting the two over the easement, and so that neighborhood will be considered one and have one subdivision name. And they will not be, yes, so there will be two subdivisions with three parcels total, and they will not share an HOA with the existing Riverdale community.
Okay, you guys were able to find the Planning Commission minutes where they approved what you've listed here.
Yes, sir. There
Okay,
was
now,
a vote.
And
Mhm.
that included this land?
Yes, sir. All of the gray. It is 93.9 acres.
Okay, and was it, with what's going on now, is it still consistent with what you found with the Planning Commission minutes in 95?
So they did develop, I believe, about 82 single-family lots, but then the other phases were not developed.
Oh, okay, but what's going on now is still consistent with what the records that you found?
Oh, so, I mean, it would be consistent with the overall total of the 676, but they allowed for multifamily units. So that would not necessarily be consistent. But they are asking to rezone from a PD to R12, which is single-family
What's
residential.
being requested is less intense. than
Yes,
what
sir.
Was, yeah. Ms. Cuddy, can you speak to traffic studies and stuff have already been
Sure,
done there?
absolutely. A traffic study has been performed. DOT is currently reviewing it, so I don't want to give any false kind of confirmation of improvements, but right now the study does recommend a turn lane into the tract that has an entrance from Gap Creek Road, and then it also recommends some turn lanes at Gap Creek and Hawkesbury Drive. So that's under review. DOT did help with the scoping for this study, and they are performing the third-party review.
Going back to my question about, is this consistent with the agreement originally? So why do they have to, if it was already okayed under a PD, why do they have to come back now and say, we won't get R12?
Well, so the PD, the only thing that we can find would be 284 single-family lots total, and so this would be 274 plus the existing 82 that are already there. So it's not consistent with the PD, but again, the PD, we don't have good records of it, so we probably would have requested to do an update anyway, to do a new PD. But staff does agree that R12 is consistent with the future land use map and what's going on in that area, so staff does recommend approval as well. We do think that R12 is much more consistent with this area than a multifamily product.
Can you talk again about the roadway access? I know they're coming in from Gap Creek. How are they getting to the other two? Is it off that Woodruff?
Sure. So, I hope I use this right. Okay. So, Hawkesbury Drive is right here. It's an existing entrance into Riverdale. So there will be a continuation of this road up into this area. And then there will be two potential crossings over this easement. And then this, more houses down here. And then they will have a road that also ties into Tigerdale Lane right here.
Have they spoken anything about the consistency, since they are attaching to that new or existing? I mean, are they going to make the houses similar? Have they talked about that at all, or is it going to be like a brand new entrance and then a new?
Yeah, it'll be a new entrance with a new subdivision name as well.
Separate HOA eventually.
Separate HOA. And we can certainly have the applicant and developer, if you're interested, address that more.
In time, we will. Yeah, thank you.
You may have mentioned this, I missed it. Could you speak, was anything mentioned about Wade Hampton and Hawkesbury?
Yes, so that intersection, I believe there were two different turn lanes that were recommended, both on Wade Hampton and then on Hawkesbury. And so again, that hasn't been confirmed by DOT, and especially with Wade Hampton being their road, they'll have a say in whether or not they want that there, but that is a recommendation from the study. And if DOT agrees, then the developer will be responsible for putting in that improvement.
So the two large properties to the left then, they don't have another means of exiting? Everybody has to come out that Hawkesbury?
So Hawkesbury, yes, and Tigerdale will come out to here.
Is that up above the star on the small lot, is that Brookdale? Is that
This
where
one?
those people were concerned about? Or
Yes,
is it
ma'am.
over there? Okay.
Yes, ma'am, this is Brookdale right
Yeah,
here.
okay. It's like a lot of cars going out that one little road, one little subdivision road.
Yeah, so that portion, they're proposed to have 53 lots in that small tract. Right here.
Okay, that one's gonna have 53 lots in it.
And again, that's completely separate than the 200 and some. They're not going to tie together at all.
Yep, so the density-wise, they could put 88. The preliminary plat that they have submitted for initial review is for 53 lots.
So that's the one that would probably be going out onto Gap Creek Road?
Yes,
that they
ma'am.
were concerned about, okay, so it won't be all the 800 or so?
Correct.
600, 800 cars,
Yeah.
whatever.
There's no plan for another entrance other than Hawkesbury for the other?
I don't believe so. I'd have to, let me look at the preliminary plat.
It does touch Woodruff Drive.
No, it's just Hawkesbury, but we could have the engineer address that if they could kind of trace the roads. Is it, where is it? Sorry. Oh, right here. Where are we going?
You want to come to the podium, and if you'll give your
Yeah. So they
name and
just go-
association with the project, it'd be helpful. Thank you.
Yeah, they could use Lemon Creek to get out as well. I mean, with the existing traffic calming devices that are on that road, I don't know that it would be the most attractive route.
Thank you, Ashley. My name is Paul Harrison with Blue Water Civil Design, and we're the civil engineers, and Nick Myers is here as well with they're the developer and also the home builder for the community. Is this the pointer?
It's the top one.
Okay. So I just want to touch on a couple things that Ashley said, and I'd be glad to provide that to anybody on council. We've had a traffic impact study done. It's actually been signed off on and approved by DOT. The improvements that are being implemented is a left turn lane into the starred property off of Gap Creek. This is the one that'll stand on its own with no internal connection back to Riverdale or to Brookdale Acres. So there'll be a left turn lane into this section. The 3 points of access that kind of access the overall property. You have Lemon Creek Drive that also ties into Gap Creek. Then you have Hawkesbury that comes directly out to 29. And then, I apologize, I don't know the name of this road, but
Clearview.
Yeah.
Clearview actually is another ingress, egress too. So there's actually 3 points of access, 2 off of Wade Hampton, and then Lemon Creek off of Gap Creek. The improvements on Wade Hampton are a full dedicated right turn lane off of 29 into Hawkesbury, and then an additional right turn lane out of Hawkesbury turning westbound onto Highway 29. So those are the improvements that the traffic impact study recommended. DOT has signed off on those, and we have given staff the TIS, but we can give them the documentation from DOT as well. Ashley talked about our 2 internal points of access. There's a huge power line right away that kind of bisects this property. Our points of access are through that connection off of Hawkesbury, and then this extension to Tigerdale just stops, but we plan to continue that road on. And I think Ashley also said we've actually submitted the preliminary plat to the City of Greer already, so if you guys wanted to review those documents are out there as well. And I would say that this would be a huge decrease in density and overall density for the entire property. And it would take the multifamily component, whether it's multifamily apartments or even a single family attached townhome, it would take that off of the table. If this is successful, based on what we've already submitted as well for backup documentation. If you want to say, Nick, I don't.
No, Nicholas Myers with Pulte Homes, just for the record. Paul and Ashley did a good job covering all the details. Just to clarify, I know there was a question earlier that on the left side of the property that's existing within Riverdale is 221 lots, or single-family detached homes, and then on the Gap Creek side is 53. So just wanted to clarify that as well. Thank you.
So the way it's envisioned, you have Hibiscus Court, Geranium Lane, and Tigerdale Lane coming out on Hawkesbury. That's the left-hand roads. Right there. Yeah, right in there. So when you're done, you're going to have 200 and something more homes coming out on Hawkesbury. Is that correct?
Well, they don't necessarily, what I was trying to say was they don't necessarily have to come out on Hawkesbury. I'm not saying they're going to go up Lemon Creek Drive, but there is an access to Gap Creek along Lemon Creek Drive. And then you also have this road as well that connects back to 29.
I'm talking about the undeveloped big gray spot over there.
This.
Yes, all of that.
It comes back out Hawkesbury, but we can't control somebody making a left on Lemon Creek and going back up to Gap Creek.
I understand that, but Hawkesbury is the only avenue for people coming out of the new development. Right?
No, sir. These two tie together across the power line right away.
Yes.
So they all tie back together.
So they can go out north somehow?
No, I'm saying this property ties back down through this property and ties back to Tigerdale Lane. From that intersection of Hawkesbury, you're correct. The only avenue is from that point out.
And you're going to have how many houses over on the left-hand properties?
Yep, 221 is what we proposed. We do have access to this road as well, but I think that at most would be an emergency access at most. I mean, I don't think we want to entice people to use that road. It's not Highway 29, and it's not the Gap Creek either. We could have an emergency, if it was a big concern, we could have an emergency access to that road that would provide for emergency vehicle purposes. They could get out there.
Mr. Harrison, I live on Lemon Creek. It's already a cut through from Gap Creek over to Hawkesbury. While I genuinely appreciate the fact that this is a less intense, request than it could be, that is the concern there. So I think any possibility of some sort of outlet on that north side would be a good thing.
Meaning you're talking full access, or just would you be satisfied with emergency access?
What are your thoughts against full access?
My concern with full access is if I access out onto that road, I'm going to have to improve that road back all the way for a certain period of, and my guess is that's a prescriptive right of way. And although GIS may show 36 foot or 50 foot, my guess is it's prescriptive right of way, ditch to ditch. And I don't want to have to go acquire properties all the way up that road to get probably what it will take to improve that road all the way back to however far you got to improve it. That's my big concern with providing a full access. And then I think that introduces another level. I think those residences along that road, you bring them into the fold too. I don't think.
Opinion, yes.
Yeah.
And you are technically correct as far as Clearview goes. I will say, and you all know this, Clearview, it comes out, 50 feet away from Wade Hampton. So, I mean, it's tying right back into Hawkesbury to give any access at all. So, kind of going around the bush to come back to the exact same spot as if you went to Hawkesbury there. But you are technically correct where that's concerned.
They actually own, it's, these gray pocket areas, that big gray pocket area, and these gray lots right here, especially the three on the left, right as you enter into Hawkesbury. The plan is for those just to straighten up, clean up the right-of-way through there, because apparently it was not recorded correctly. So we don't envision putting lots. We're not proposing any lots on these. We just want to clean up that right-of-way and just dedicate it to open space, whether it goes to the existing HOA, whether the city wants it. But once we clean up the right-of-way and do our improvements to that intersection, we just plan to turn that into open space. And the same way for this property as well. We're basically not proposing anything on that land. We're just showing right away, and open space, and it goes into the community as additional open space. And I do want to say this, and I'm not trying to argue, but if it doesn't go through as something a conventional R12 type zoning district, our only option is to submit a revised DRD and try to match up as close to the original PD documents that we can find the documentation out there to, and then we're allowed a higher density than what we're actually proposing.
I don't think we're opposed to R12. What concerns me is the way the traffic's got all funneled down to that one road.
Yeah, that's me too. Not a big
Yeah.
road.
From the existing residents, I can tell you, I've already had that conversation that we welcome the R12 as opposed to, a higher density that way. That is the single concern is Hawkesbury. There are 221 more homes. Because the reality, you're right, they could go out up Gap Creek. As a resident, don't love that. Are already knowing, the school traffic and everything else that cuts through that way. Now, the road doesn't belong to me personally. Any resident can use it, of course, that way. But the reality is, most people are going to want to go out in and out Wade Hampton there, and that's a lot of extra homes that way. So I don't know what the answer is.
I got one suggestion. We could show the emergency access going back out to Woodruff, and we could show interconnectivity to the parcels to the north, which they're not developed now. But who's to say someone doesn't come in and with an application next month and have a development proposed on one of those larger parcels? They have direct connection back to Gap Creek, which in the future, you got two separate parcels, this large parcel and this large parcel. And I'm not sure if that goes back out, but I know this one does. There could be another means.
They tie directly to Gap Creek, those parcels north.
I know this one does. I know that one does.
It ties actually to Appalach Duncan Road, which ties into Gap Creek. So the parcel just north of the state of Oklahoma turned upside down right there is ties into Appalach Duncan Road. And then that turns into
This one ties back to the
Appalach Duncan.
And then this one ties to
Now,
directly
yes.
to Gap Creek.
Yes, sir.
The question I have is about the traffic impact study. Which points all did you study? Did it reference anything about the signal timings for 29 or any kind of signal upgrades that need to be done for the TIA? Or I'm assuming you studied at Gap Creek, at Hampton.
I think we studied here, and all of our at all the point accesses, the two along Gap Creek, the intersection of Gary Armstrong, the intersection of Wade Hampton, this intersection, and then these two intersections.
Did it reference any kind of upgrades for those? Okay.
It did.
Just the left turns and the right, what we talked
Well,
about?
I'm sure they were aware of what was going on at that intersection.
The roundabout or whatever. going on. Yeah.
Where does Woodruff go to the northwest there?
It dead ends at Appalach Duncan, sir.
Oh, okay, all right. And then does it dead end on that piece of property there adjacent to the one that we're looking at?
What it looks like right there, it turns into a private road. It kind of just stops. The right-of-way runs that. Ashley, there you go.
Asphalt to me
Looks like it stops about
looks like
there.
it stops about right there.
Yeah, okay, that's what it appears on this as well.
What is your projected build-out time frame? I know
So-
that's not an exact science, but what would you have in mind at this point?
As we talked about earlier, the side on the right off Gap Creek is separate from the existing community. And I would say, give or take, 6 to 8 years for both to be complete. That would be a fair estimate.
Are you going to start simultaneously, or do you one side versus another first?
The plan would be to start simultaneously.
If that is feasible to show that tying in, the opportunity to tie into the north, I'd appreciate that. I know the residents would as well.
I mean,
So at least to give that
it would be
opportunity.
there for future.
Right.
That random blue line, is that like a floodplain? I'm just kind of confused about the property lines, or is that like proposed road? You see what I'm talking about? Like that.
The city of Greer actually owns, some of that land along the creek. The parcel right
That's
here.
CPW, isn't it?
No.
Oh, that's,
What about heading on right there, that one? Where you just point-
Riley and I have an interesting perspective about this piece of property. Yeah. Well, it's interesting that they brought up 1995. Yeah, really. It started then, but they were in, I guess, complete bankruptcy by 99 when we were elected and took office in 2000. Stormwater ponds hadn't been installed, the roads weren't completed. They had given us at that point in time, or said they were going to give us all the frontage along the river there, and we actually had started a plan for a trail system that was going to go all the way back to the lake at that point in time, and it turned out that none of that came about because nobody could ever find the original investors on that particular project, and it languished there until Lemon Creek was completed, which I don't know when it was, but yeah, we inherited a mess when that first was proposed and started.
Well, it was a good idea.
Sounded great, yeah. All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
If y'all will be available for anything else, we'll let you know if we need anything. Okay? All right. Not at this point, sir. I'm sure the engineer will be glad to address it if you want to speak to him.
Thank you all for your time.
Thank you. Council, we have a motion and a second. Floor has been open for discussion. We've got overview from the engineer. At this point, further discussion, questions, comments?
Ms. Cotty, simple.
Sir, not right now, no, sir. If you want to have a sidebar with the engineer, if he wants to step out, he can. If he wants to stay, he can, but you can have a conversation with him at an appropriate time. Yeah.
Ms. Cotty, so just for super clarity's sake, what, besides the backstory, the financial issues, that way, in theory, the property's been inside the city since 1995 as PD. What in theory would have stopped them from being able to develop it all this time? Money set aside.
I mean, nothing.
Nothing, right? So for that reason, I welcome the R12, as a resident and as the representative here.
Others?
I'm not sure that I wouldn't like to require them to do the other entrance, exit in their plan. I mean, I'd like to see that in writing.
So, I mean, we can't do a conditional zoning, so, I mean, there is a potential for DRD. Staff wouldn't recommend that, but there's no way for us to.
You can't require them to put a rear entrance.
That would be considered conditional zoning, and so no. I mean, that meets all of the requirements based on, I mean, our fire marshal has reviewed it as well, and with the traffic study, so we technically can't.
My concern is not fire. My concern is traffic.
So you're saying the points of access currently, they concur with the traffic impact study? Everything is?
Yeah, the traffic impact study
So that additional road would just
was
be-
studied with that layout in mind.
So the additional connection would just be for, it wouldn't necessarily be required based off of that?
Correct.
Okay.
Others? Ms. Duncan?
Mr. Arrowood,
Yes.
Mr. Booker,
Yes.
Mr. Hopper,
Yes.
Mr. Dumas,
Yes.
Mr. Bettis,
No.
Ms. Albert,
No.
Mayor Danner.
Yes. Council, let's move to the first reading of ordinance number 20-22. This is an ordinance approving a major change to the design review district, the DRD, of certain real property in the city of Greer related to the Gilbert Street Townhomes development. Ordinance 22-2020 is a DRD review district with a major change. Ms. Cotty?
Sure, thank you. This is for two parcels on Gilbert Street, 124, and then an unaddressed. Again, you can see on the aerial the one outlined in red as well as the one with the star. These properties are currently zoned DRD Design Review District. The properties around it are zoned residential multifamily. And then here is the future land use map. It is traditional neighborhood. This is the current street view of the site. And then this is the approved DRD. So the original DRD allowed for up to 8 units. They were considered townhomes, but you can see it was 1 duplex and 2 triplexes in theory. But again, 8 units. And here again is the elevations and the floor plan layout of that original DRD. So they're requesting a major change to go from 8 townhome or attached product units to 6 single-family detached lots. And I apologize, it is a little light, but they are rather small lots, but again, single-family detached and up to 6 units. The statement of intent calls for, again, the 6 units. They're 3-bedroom, 2-bath with approximately almost 1,200 square feet. They'd have a 20-foot setback off Gilbert Street and 5-foot side and rear setback. They would have a 1-car garage as well as pad for parking spaces. And then it does call for stone accents on the front facade and some landscaping. Planning Commission did hold a public hearing and recommend approval. Staff recommends approval as well. I'm happy to answer any questions, and I believe the applicant's here as well.
Comes as first reading of ordinance number 2020-22. Entertain a motion to receive.
So moved.
Motion and a second.
Second.
Floor is open for discussion. By show of hand, is the owner of the property or representative of the owner of the property with us this evening? Thank you, sir. You're available for questions? Yes, sir. All righty, thank you. Floor is open for discussion. Comments? Questions? Anything you'd like to add to this discussion at this point? Ms. Duncan?
Mr. Arrowood,
Yes.
Mr. Booker,
Yes.
Mr. Hopper,
Yes.
Mr. Dumas,
Yes.
Mr. Bettis,
Yes.
Ms. Albert,
Yes.
Mayor Danner.
Yes. Thank you, sir. Let's move to the first reading of ordinance number 21-2022. This is an ordinance to change the zoning classification of properties owned by Brian Fowler and Gregory Taylor located on North Main Street from RM1 to R5. Ms. Cotty?
Sure. This is 3 parcels that are requesting rezoning. This is located at the intersection of North Main Street and Wildwood Drive, in close proximity to the Wade-Hampton corridor. You can see in the aerial again the outlined red parcel as well as the 2 with stars to the north and south. This is a current zoning map. Again, it is zoned RM1. The property to the west is R12, and then that dark pink fuchsia color that you see is all C3 along Wade Hampton. The dark brown that you see to the south is RM2, residential multifamily as well. For future land use, it is a traditional neighborhood bordering on suburban commercial. And this is a current street view of the property. Again, with the current zoning, there are 3 parcels that are zoned RM1. With the R5 zoning, they would potentially be able to subdivide and get up to 6 lots with that 5,000 square foot minimum. Planning Commission did hold a public hearing at their April meeting and recommend approval. I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have.
For the purpose of discussion, I'll entertain a motion to receive. And a second. Floor is open for discussion.
This doesn't necessarily change the density of this parcel, it just changes kind of the layout.
Yeah, I mean, they could have potentially done duplexes, but it would, again, it would allow for up to 6 lots for single-family detached.
And how many were there originally?
There's 3 lots currently, with 1 house on the middle lot.
By show of hands, the owner of the property or representative of the owner of the property with us this evening? Okay, thank you. Are you available for questions? Okay, thank you. Others? Comments? Questions? Discussion? Anything you'd like to add to this conversation? Ms. Duncan?
Mr. Airwood,
Yes.
Mr. Booker,
Yes.
Mr. Hopper,
Yes.
Mr. Dumas,
Yes.
Mr. Bettis,
Yes.
Miss Albert,
Yes.
Mayor Danner.
Yes. First reading of ordinance number 22-2022. This is an ordinance to change the zoning classification of property owned by River of Life Romanian Church located on South Line Street from R12 to C2. Ms. Cotty.
Sure. This is a request to rezone 2 parcels. Again, it is at the corner of South Line Street at the intersection with Snow Street. You can see on the aerial, it's denoted by the red outline parcel as well as the 1 parcel to the south. It is currently zoned R12 single family residential. And then across the street is R75 single family residential. It is designated as traditional neighborhood in the future land use map. And then this is the current street view. Planning Commission did hold a public hearing at its April meeting. There was extensive conversation that is noted in the minutes. Ultimately, they did recommend denial. Staff recommends denial as well. C2, staff does not feel, as well as Planning Commission, that C2 is an appropriate zoning based on the surrounding uses. And happy to go over any of Planning Commission's conversation. Happy to answer any questions that you might have.
For the purpose of discussion, I'll entertain a motion to receive. Second. Motion and second. Floor is open for discussion. By show of hands, is the owner of the property a representative of the owner of the property with us this evening? Okay, thank you.
Why did staff recommend C2?
So we met with the applicants.
Because you know that was going to fail. I mean, Planning Commission got the decision right. Anybody could look at that and say, that doesn't need to be C2. What's the church zone?
So the church is zoned R75, but they have...
And that takes, because the church is...
The church is eligible for a special exception.
So why can't you do that with the parking?
Because a standalone parking lot would not be considered church at that point because it's not connected to the church property. It's not contiguous with it. that we would not consider it a church. We would consider it a parking lot. And those two parcels by themselves do not meet the requirements for special exception. There has to be 40,000 square foot, and I believe they're closer to 20,000.
Well,
I mean, this was a tough decision. We spoke with the applicants at length. We spent a long time meeting with them discussing their options for potential parking at community partner sites, including the Cultural Arts Center.
C2, recommended C2 is setting them up to fail.
Well, the only other option that could have been available was DRD. And ultimately, staff does not support a standalone parking lot, even if it's associated with the church in that location. And so
Why
staff...
can't you give it non-conforming zoning like the church? Because the church is on, what do you say?
Well, it's grandfathered in. It's considered non-conforming. We can't...
But churches are non-conforming, correct? They take the zoning of the area. Is that right?
So it is currently zoned R12. It's not a church.
No. The church is R7, right?
Yes, which
But it's
churches
not-
are allowed by special exception.
Okay. Well, and why can this not be?
Because it's
Part of the
not
church.
connected to the parcels of the church. If it were, we would have required them to combine with the parcels, and it could have been grandfathered in. But it's completely standalone across the street. It's not connected to the church.
Well, this is just something, in my opinion, that's just caught in the weeds that's wrong. And this is where I've said time and time again, we have to try to make things work in cases like this. Because even if you were to make it non-conforming, then if the church moves, the only other thing that's going to keep that zoning is another church, right? So is there not something that we can do to make that work? I mean, because
Again, the only other option would be a DRD. And again, the reason why staff didn't have this applicant go down that road is because staff does not support a standalone parking lot in that location. We don't think it's appropriate use.
But you thought C2 was.
No, we recommended that they didn't go that route either, but it is their right to apply for it. We told them we would be recommending denial, and we encouraged them to find other parking options with partnerships.
Location where they're at, they don't have any other options. And the parking lot that's behind the church, and they've done an outstanding job on updating and bringing that church into a very nice looking place.
Yeah, I understand.
On that corner there, that home is gone.
Yeah.
Yes.
Which raises the question, was this project started before there was any consideration on the zoning? I mean, it exists
They
now,
applied.
does it not?
They applied for a moving permit for the home, which they had a permit to move. During inspections, when they started putting gravel out and grading the site after the home moved, our inspections officers did go out there and stop work and let them know they couldn't do that. And so they came to our office to discuss what their plans were. And at that time, again, we told them that it wasn't workable under current zoning, and we discussed, potential options.
And by stop work, you mean like a red sign was put out there, stop work?
Yeah, and I mean, they were very amenable. They came right in to talk to us about what they should do and what the process was, and that's ultimately why they applied for this. Again, we advised them that staff would be recommending denial, but that was their option to bring it forward.
So why is staff adamantly opposed against the DRD parking lot?
We just don't think a standalone parking lot is appropriate in this location because of the surrounding uses. I mean, it is a traditional neighborhood. If it were connected with the church and integrated into that development.
No, it's not a traditional neighborhood. You got a parking lot one block down, a big parking lot on city property. Across the street, you've got parking at Stevens Field. And then right on down the street, you've got Victor Church with a big parking lot. So tell me how it doesn't belong.
Mr. Harrell, with the, if you don't mind, the Future land use map identifies it specifically as traditional neighborhood. And staff takes that into consideration when they make their recommendation, but it stops at a recommendation.
I got it, but a DRD, can it not be, since it would be a DRD, there would be an agreement that says, once this ceases to be a church.
The statement of intent.
Then it's no longer. It's residential multifamily, whatever. In that not?
I mean, we couldn't enforce that. It would remain a parking lot until someone wanted to do something
To change
else with it.
I mean, it would always be, if it conveyed to another party, it would still be a parking lot. Just like, yeah, as long as it's non-conforming.
Again, if that is something you want to table it and encourage them to bring that back as a DRD, I think that's council's right.
Staff really missed the boat. I mean.
Well, we didn't want
No,
to
I think
have.
staff missed the boat. No, sir, they have not, there's times that you gotta work things out. And if I sit here at this table and figure it out, I believe that staff, because they should know more than me, if we can do a DRD with a condition that says, if it's sold.
The ability to do the DRD, Mr. Airwood, always exists. Always exists. It doesn't change the fact that the land use itself would be the land use, which is a parking lot in the middle of the future land use map that says traditional neighborhood. Based on that alone, it's not staff's objection to the use as a, in some objection to the church's idea of using this as a parking lot. That has nothing to do with it. It was the request that it's two standalone parcels separated by the road, not attached to the church, and the request was this would be a parking lot in an areas under the future land use map that was designated as residential. It was based on that.
Yeah, I got that, but there's large parking areas everywhere in that whole several block area. The only difference is there's not a strip of land that separates them. And I know it must be law, but with annexation, we don't consider roads. Everything's considered together. And generally when we are, and so that begs the question, if we are rezoning, just take this completely out, but if we've got somebody wanting to build a commercial building on point A, there's a road, point B is a home, why do we consider point B as a home and not allow the commercial development many times?
Because the issue of contiguity for annexation purposes and the issue of contiguity for zoning purposes it's not as clear. So, and the other thing is this particular zoning, C2, can still work with an affirmative vote of council, and in this case, a 2/3 supermajority, because Planning Commission recommended denial. So the zoning that the applicant has put forward is feasible by action of council, whether it was DRD, residential, C2, whatever. That is still an opportunity to have that property rezoned by action of council.
I would like to clarify that staff, again, did tell them the options, that the only real options were to request C2 because that is the least intense zoning district that allows for a standalone parking lot. Another option would be DRD. However, staff would recommend denial. If you don't agree with that, I understand, and you're right, but staff would recommend denial. That is a $1,545 application fee and requires a site plan and a statement of intent that they would have to hire a civil engineer. So staff recommended they go this route, and if council felt really strongly that they should go a DRD route, then they could, at that point, table it and bring it back as a DRD. Again, staff does not recommend that option, but that is certainly an option, and that is why staff went the route they did.
But to my point, C2, if the land use map is residential, why would you even think about recommending C2?
Because it is the least intense zoning district that allows for a standalone parking lot, which is what the use they're asking for is.
Okay, so
we didn't agree with that zoning
but
district.
A DRD, could you put in the language that once the church parking cease to exist, or if it was going to be used for another purpose, it would have to be rezoned.
That's not enforceable. That's not language that can be, a DRD defines the
It costs
use.
them extra, according to what she said, right?
Yes.
If he chooses to go DRD, then he's gonna have engineer or survey or some big plan and $1,500 or something.
Well, if that's council's.
Which again, if council feels comfortable with the DRD, they can still do that.
I think it's just bad. I think it's bad governance for us.
For it to be C2? Is that
Yeah,
what you're concerned
yeah,
with?
because it's been pointed out that it's all our, whatever, it's residential according to land, but we're going to go against that when there was another. Listen, the simplest thing is to say C2. I don't, whatever. I just think we should have tried to work harder to get a way to make this happen.
Paint the crosswalk connecting the two properties. Does that help?
I just got
If
one
it's painted
question.
on the road.
One question is, from the C2 aspect, if this goes through, what steps will be taken to safeguard the surrounding property owners? Will a fence be put up, bushes? What would that, will they have to get engineer drawings as well?
Oh, certainly. But our current standards for screening for parking lots are not strong. That's something that will be addressed in the UDO. But
So
our
for
current
C2, they
standards,
wouldn't have to have any screening?
they would, because
Okay.
it's parking.
Okay.
But again, our current standards, I don't feel are strong enough, and that is something that we're going to be addressing in the UDO.
Now, if they pave this whole section of property, how large is this lot again? It's not an acre, right?
It's about 20,000 square feet with both.
Okay. Now, I'm just thinking of the water runoff for the surrounding owners if they pave it. Is there any consideration?
They would have to do a civil plan just like any other development and go through stormwater review.
Mm-hmm.
It's less than an acre, so they may be able to apply for some kind of waiver, but
Okay, other questions at this point? I'll entertain the petition of one representative of the church to speak.
I'm sorry for this. By the way, my name is Cosmin Avram, residing at 126 Willow Barn Drive in Greer. I am the senior pastor of River of Life Romanian Church. I want to express my apology for all this situation, sensitive. We understand that. When I first time came in South Carolina was in 2017. I came directly from Romania after mission work with my family there, and I found this very small community gathering in the chapel room of Praise Cathedral Church, having a very good relationship with the staff there, with the Pastor Jerry Madden. And Pastor Jerry Madden recommended us this location at the point when we were just about 30 adult members. We took it slowly and step by step to get the property on 104 New Woodruff Road. And by God's grace, we started to grow up, and we got to this point where we really need extra space parking. When we were in the process of remodeling the actual sanctuary, this property came on the market. We really thought it's going to be one of our best options to have in the future an extended parking there. We didn't realize all the implications at that point. We tried to take it again step by step based on what we could do, what we could afford financially too at that time. And we are in this situation now when we would really ask for this special exemption on whatever it takes from the city council to help us have this property redesigned for reuse for a parking lot for our church, with the promise from our end that we're going to do whatever it takes to make it right and to maintain good relationships with all our neighbors, which we appreciate. And as far as I could see, they appreciated us too so far. Again, I'm sorry for all this inconvenience. And I want to mention also something. The time when we started to put gravel there, it was not because we started to work without a permit there. After the company that we hired to move the house there, they left all the dirt there, and we thought first of our neighbors to do something, not to have the stormwater go with mud on the vicinity. That was our thought. We didn't want to offend anyone. You could see what we tried to do the best we can on that building. I really appreciate your time, and I hope I'm sure you're gonna make the right decision. Thank you very much. God bless you.
There was mention, sir, of at the services, and I wasn't clear on the distinction.
Yeah.
140 children or 140 members at each service?
At this point, we are 104 adult members with kids and teenagers, and young people. They are not baptized. We are around 200 people altogether.
And you're currently meeting in both of those buildings then, the sanctuary piece and
so we have the sanctuary. Right next to the sanctuary, it's the Sunday school classes. And on the other building, it's what we are calling education building. We have another Sunday school class there because we have many kids, and we have 3 Sunday school classes one in the meantime. Yeah, so we use the other building also, having a classroom there.
So you're pretty cozy in that building with 200 people in there, aren't you?
Yeah, we have the CO with 207, so we are pretty close there.
Other questions?
Scotty, what is the current requirement if they left the lot pervious? What would they be required to do for screening?
What do you mean? If it were a parking lot, or if?
We'll call it that.
So
if
we
they left it like it is now, what kind of screening would be required?
I mean, nothing. Currently, it's just considered vacant. We require that parking lots be a hard paved surface.
Not all of it. Not according to code.
Only for large buildings that have alternative compliance.
No, I thought there was pervious surfaces in our code that could be.
There is alternative compliance, but those are for larger sites. This would not be eligible.
I did have one more question for I guess that was the pastor. Do you foresee this being a long-term stay for you all, or do you think you'll outgrow this within a certain time frame?
I don't know what to say at this point. Honestly and straight, if the growing of the church will be in the next 2 years, as it was in the last 2 years, definitely we have to do something, even to extend somehow the existing facilities, or to relocate. This is but we don't know what's going to come.
You've done a beautiful job with the building.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Very nice. And I'd like to see us.
It was a lot of sacrifice from our people. Most of them worked very hard there, and we tried to, actually, honest and open. We didn't borrow money from the bank for the actual building. We just borrow money to buy this property on 702 South Line Extension Street. Yeah. I'm saying this because I wanted you to see the the implication of our community into remodel all this building on 104 New Woodruff.
Thank you, sir. Council, we have the question before us, a motion and a second. This comes with a recommendation for denial. So any vote in regards to the ordinance as it stands would require the majority, supermajority vote of council to overturn. Are we clear on that piece of this action?
So a no vote would be to overturn. Right.
No. The request is to rezone. So if there's a motion made to approve the rezoning request and it's seconded, it would take a supermajority of council to approve it. To rezone the property, yes.
I have one question. I don't know if it's going to be able to be answered tonight, but when you look at the aerial view and you look across the street, you've got a lot of parking that's not paved. You know, it's ball field. And then as you look at homes that's under RM, there's a lot of them that's dirt. Can that lot be zoned RM and you do it all, most of it in like a Bermuda grass and then maybe some gravel at the entrance without having to go through? I don't know. I'm just looking.
Mr. Airwood, yeah, I understand. But our code does not allow pervious parking on a lot this size. We don't have a mechanism to allow that under the code.
So we would make it impervious and let the water run off.
Effectively, the way it is, yes, sir. If they have any fidelity to the way our land development regulations, yes, sir. It will make sense when the UDO is adopted, and we've addressed a number of these shortcomings. Agreed.
So I am clear. It's yes. No is like no. I mean, no, you can't do it. Yes, you can.
That's exactly right. Yes, you are saying that you are approving the rezoning request. No is you are denying the rezoning
I wasn't sure
request.
if I was voting here on how they do.
Planning Commission's recommendation in this case does have a tendency to confuse. What you are doing is voting on the applicant's request. The difference is because Planning Commission recommended denial, it will take a supermajority of council.
So if it passes and becomes C2, they will be allowed to park on it?
If it passes tonight, it will have passed first reading. But ultimately, if it passes as C2, parking will be allowed and they will be able to.
Parking is one of, about
Yes,
35.
yes. They can they can build their lot. Yes, sir.
Does it need to be, will they have to improve it?
Oh, yes, sir.
They would have to pave it and do the required screening
Yes,
for
sir.
parking, which again is not adequate per staff's opinion.
Okay. First reading of ordinance number 20-2022. We clear? Yes vote is a yes vote, and no vote is a no vote on this one.
And I hate to complicate things, but I do want to make sure you understand that if there were a denial, that the applicant would not be able to apply for a rezoning of any zoning district for 1 year. So I just want to make sure everyone remembers and understands that.
I don't mean to keep stretching things out, but for my clarity, is a contract pending, or does the church already own the property?
They
Contract is
own the
pending?
property.
You do own the property? Well, I know there's some urgency to get this done, but if we're looking to make some sort to fix what we all agree is an unfortunate issue as part of the UDO, is there any way we can hold this over or recommend holding this over until it's fixed as part of the UDO? What's the problem with that?
That you would have a non-compliant use and they would continue to park in that lot.
And they would, they would be issued a violation
Yeah,
if they
I mean,
used
it's
it
just
as parking.
non-compliant.
So it's better to do it before the new UDO rules.
the UDO is in draft form, so we may allow for neighborhood commercial. I still doubt that a standalone parking lot would be an allowed use in neighborhood commercial. But
But I would think that would be complaint driven, right? Issuing a violation. We're not actively going out and.
I will say we went out based on a complaint, so I don't doubt that there would be complaints.
I don't know that in this case, Mr. Dumas, that, malicious compliance is something that we want to get into the habit of doing. I think a decision just needs to be made one way or the other on this particular property, and not doing our jobs by not enforcing what our zoning code specifically lays out.
First reading of ordinance number 20-2022, unless it is amended, is before us at this point. Any additional conversation in this regard? Ms. Duncan?
Mr. Arrowood,
Yes for the C2.
Mr. Booker,
No.
Mr. Hopper,
Yes.
Mr. Dumas, Mr. Bettis,
Yes.
Miss Albert,
Yes.
Mayor Danner.
No. Next item before us is the first and final reading of resolution number 8-2022. It's a resolution declaring the city's intent to reimburse itself for certain expenditures made prior to the city's consumption of a consummation of a federally tax-exempt financing. Mr. Seifert, Mr. Merriman. Oh, you were already up there. Huh?
Yes, sir.
Excuse me.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. At last meeting of council, you approved the city moving ahead to purchase 2 fire trucks because of the length of time to receive those is about 22 to 24 months, maybe a little longer. This resolution before you is a legal, technical requirement that we will need to do so that we can pay for the fire trucks now and then reimburse ourselves after the budget and we release the new lease purchase for fiscal year 23.
So it comes with a recommendation from staff?
Yes, sir.
Okay. If we're going to do it.
Yes. We've approved the fire truck, so we need to reimburse ourselves.
Reimburse ourselves. First and final reading of resolution number 8-2022. Entertain a motion to receive.
So moved.
And a second.
Second.
Floor is open for discussion. Questions? Comments? Hearing none. Ms. Duncan?
Mr. Arrowood,
Yes.
Mr. Booker,
Yes.
Mr. Hopper,
Yes.
Mr. Dumas,
Yes.
Mr. Bettis,
Yes.
Miss Albert,
Yes.
Mayor Danner.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. First and final reading of resolution 9-2022, a resolution approving, ratifying, and consenting to the transfer and partial assignment by CP Greer LLC to an assumption by LBA or Core Company 17 LLC of a certain existing amended and restated economic development agreement to which the city is a party and other matters related thereto. Mr. Reno Deaton is here to hopefully explain this to us.
Mayor and Council, good evening. Reno Deaton with the Greer Development Corporation. This matter pertains to the Clarius Park, the industrial park. They're just off the Vern Smith Parkway. You might recall several years ago, Council approved a economic development project agreement to support that project through incentives. A portion of that property, Clarius is now selling to another holder. And this request is simply to take those benefits that you approved for Clarius and then assign them to the new owner of that particular piece of property.
Comes with a recommendation from the Executive Director of the Greer Development Corporation. I'll entertain a motion to receive.
So moved.
And a second.
Second.
Floor is open for discussion. Questions?
Is this typical that you do an agreement with someone who promises X and then they sell a portion of that to I guess, a different developer.
Yeah, it is, and I think we'll see more and more of it. In past years, we probably didn't see the volume of industrial, especially speculative industrial development that we are now seeing. And so I think more and more council will have an opportunity to see these types of agreements where the initial developer has come in, fulfilled their obligations in terms of capital investment, for example, and then traded that property or a portion of the property to a new holder, and then look to assign those benefits. Those benefits are typically 30 years, and many of those speculative developers won't hold the property for a 30-year term.
So the agreement we made with the original developer, that investment has been made?
That's correct, yes, sir. And then some. The original project called for a 500,000 square foot speculative building. And since that has been fulfilled, Claris has broken ground now on a 600,000 square foot speculative building. And so really good things happening out there at Claris Park.
Others? Ms. Duncan?
Mr. Earwood,
Yes.
Mr. Booker,
Yes.
Mr. Hopper,
Yes.
Mr. Dumas,
Yes.
Mr. Bettis,
Yes.
Ms. Albert,
Yes.
Mayor Danner.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Approval of Accommodations Tax Committee grant recommendations. Mr. Seifert joins us for that conversation.
Again, thank you, Mayor and Council. The city's Accommodations Tax Committee met on March 30th to review 8 applications. Had some extensive discussion there, and I relayed your conversation from last year's ATAX meeting that your wish was to support events that had more direct impact to the city and actually held events in the city. So that was taken into consideration while reviewing these 8 applications. The summary is there before you. The committee recommended full or partial funding of 6 of the 8 projects, with the Upstate Renaissance Fair getting a recommendation of $20,000, the Euro Auto Festival at $5,000, the Christmas Sevens Regional Rugby Tournament at $5,000, the Greer Arts and Eats Festival at $5,000, the 2022 Greer Concert Series of $600, and Center for the Arts Public Art Project at $600. We had a total of just over $36,000 that we were able to recommend funding, and $36,200 of that is recommended here as a recommendation from the ATAX Committee to you to approve.
Council comes with a recommendation from both staff and committee at this point. I'll entertain a motion to receive.
So moved.
And second.
Second.
Floor is open for discussion.
Who runs the Upstate Renaissance Fair?
And where is it held?
It's in the downtown park area.
The Renaissance Fair is actually held right out here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
On the grounds.
Who runs it?
Oh,
The spinning gym.
It's out of the address is a Spinning Jenny. The corporation is the Round Table Community.
mm-hmm.
I mean, is that for some sort of charity or something?
They
Or
are,
I mean, they get 20,000. What do they do with that?
the organization itself is a nonprofit organization, and it is for the support and education of that era, of the Renaissance era. And they held the event last year, and there was, I think they said about probably 15,000 people there.
I'd say easily 10 to 15,000.
Yeah.
There's a big deal in downtown.
And they expect it to grow and maybe become bigger than Freedom Blast and, some of our really big events.
The Greer Arts and Eats Festival, that's the remnants of the,
Yes, sir.
what used to be a good festival.
Family Fest.
Yeah. I'd just as soon leave that one off. I'd rather give that 5,000 to the Center for the Arts any day.
That is your prerogative, sir.
That would have to come as a motion, Mr. Bettis.
I understand that, but I'm voicing my displeasure with the Chamber of Commerce.
Yeah, well, I
They don't deserve any of our money because they're not supporting the families of this city.
Well, I kind of feel like something should have went to the that's for charity. And it draws a lot of people, even though it's not right here in Greer.
And that was the crux of that conversation, Ms. Albert, was most of those events are held, at Thornblade and other areas. We are in conversation
So I
with
guess
them.
it's more focused on what was going to happen right here.
Correct. And we're in conversation with them, or the committee is, to try to bring some of their events actually into downtown Greer.
What's the Euro Auto Festival?
It's an auto festival of European auto cars.
Who does it?
Sounds like typically they're in the parking lot
At the church, I believe.
or is it the church across the street? Isn't it?
Yeah.
And who does that benefit? Anybody? Or just people who come?
The requirement is just for them to be a nonprofit organization, not necessarily a charity. It is the requirements for a nonprofit organization to hold the event that directly benefits the city of Greer.
And who puts on the Euro Auto Festival?
The gentleman's name that put in the application is Seth Winters. And it's the Euro Auto Festival is the group, the nonprofit group. This is the East Coast premier all-European automotive event. 2-day event starting on Friday evening, carries over into Saturday.
Where do they hold it?
See where they got the location.
I do know that it is a regional event, but it also attracts national attention in terms of the cars that are brought to this. So I'm assuming that from a hotel standpoint, and I know the evening there in town that they'll line Trade Street with their cars.
To your question, Mr. Bettis, the current application does not have the event address. We are amending the application to have that in the future. But they just discussions, they talk about being in the church parking lot, downtown area. They don't really say, it's just parking lot.
There's a few of those, right? And we turned one down, so I know where it's not.
They might have some parking down there. The approval of the accommodations tax grant recommendations is before us. We've got a motion in a second. Further discussion.
The only question I got is maybe just a little more backstory on the accommodation tax funds. I mean, and the grants, are they catered towards a certain type of events coming, or can anybody apply? I mean, just trying to understand what's the benefit to funding these particular ones.
Okay, the state accommodations money itself comes from the accommodations tax you pay at a hotel. So that 10%, that they tack on top of, state tax, is that 10% that goes to the locality where the overnight stay happens. So the city receives this year about $60,000. The general fund gets to keep a little over $25,000. The rest of it goes into advertising and grants through the committee. The advertising piece is we automatically forward that to historically either Greer Development Corporation or the chamber, because it is stipulated in law that it has to have an existing advertising program already in place. So those funds go to typically those two entities because they have an ongoing advertising function. And then the remainder goes to the ATAX committee to grant. The requirement there is, again, a nonprofit organization that runs an event that supports the city of Greer in this case, since it's the tax money for here. The intent in the law through the state oversight committee is that it brings in visitors from a greater than 50-mile radius. And the intent is to support, again, hotels, because that's where the money's coming from, and other hospitality industries such as restaurants. but the larger intent is we call it heads and beds, trying to put people in the hotels.
The Foothills Philharmonic is a great product, but I don't know that it fits that criteria.
And that's why the funding was cut to that amount this year.
Others?
I just feel like some 20 from the upstate Renaissance could be sort of distributed a little bit more between the other.
The committee, from the last year's event and from their projections for future events, that could become the largest event here in the city.
Oh, really?
Yes, ma'am.
Did they receive funding before?
No, sir.
I'm just,
This is the first year.
if it went so well last year, I mean, why would they need it this year?
They want to make it bigger. A lot of the performers and educators came in on their own dime last year. They paid their own way. It is normally the actors, the educators are paid for their time during the event. They're hoping to bring in a larger event and larger presenters, larger number.
From a head bed perspective, I thought the Christmas Sevens brought in more, hotel stays, but that's just my take.
How many days is that Renaissance thing? Was that one day, Saturday?
It's over a weekend,
Over the weekend?
as I recall.
I believe it was just Saturday this past year, but they do intend to potentially make it a multi-day event. Potentially, like you say, expand it much broader than what it was, as huge as it already was. It was big for the first year.
Right.
Ms. Duncan?
Mr. Airwood,
Yes.
Mr. Booker,
Yes.
Mr. Hopper,
Yes.
Mr. Dumas,
Yes.
Mr. Bettis,
No.
Miss Albert, Mayor Danner.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Last item of regular business, the bid summary for the fireworks is Freedom Blast 2022. Mr. Merriman?
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, this is a sole source request. We had one bidder for the fireworks show for Freedom Blast, $25,000 to be rewarded, the contract to be awarded to Zambelli Fireworks. This would be a 2-year contract based on performance and service. It would be $25,000, not for both years, but it'd be $25,000 for this year with an additional second year based on performance.
That's the recommendation from staff. Do I hear a motion to receive?
So motion.
And a second.
Second.
Floor is open for discussion. Questions? Comments? Hearing none. Ms. Duncan?
Mr. Airwood,
Yes.
Mr. Booker,
Yes.
Mr. Hopper,
Yes.
Mr. Dumas,
Yes.
Mr. Bettis,
Yes.
Miss Albert,
Yes.
Mayor Danner.
Yes. We have 2 matters to review in executive session. I'll entertain a motion.
Mayor, I'd like to make a motion to enter into executive session to discuss 2 contractual matters, one pertaining to Project Chubbs and the second pertaining to Project Homecoming, both allowed by state statute, section 30-470A2.
Comes as a motion to hear a second.
Second.
Ms. Duncan?
Mr. Airwood,
Yes.
Mr. Booker,
Yes.
Mr. Hopper,
Yes.
Mr. Dumas,
Yes.
Mr. Bettis,
Yes.
Miss Albert,
Yes.
Mayor Danner.
Yes. All right, council, without any further stated business this meeting, we stand adjourned.